Just $5, but I will never forget it. The man spoke beside Annie, his voice not quiet, but not strong enough to hide the exhaustion in it either. He stood near her, right in front of the counter at Miller's Gas and Mart. One hand rested on the chipped Formica countertop, while the other pointed through the front glass window toward a black SUV parked beside pump number 3. I only need $5 for gas, he said. That's all. My SUV ran out right out there. I left my wallet at home, and my phone died before I could call anyone. Derek Miller, the shift manager, stood behind the register and let out a dry laugh. You drive that SUV and don't even have $5 for gas? He said. Come on, man. That story sounds a little much. The man turned to look at Derek. He was wearing an old gray work jacket, faded jeans, and boots with dust caught along the seams. I know it sounds hard to believe, he said, but I'm telling the truth. I was in a hurry. I forgot my wallet. I just need enough gas to get across town. Derek folded his arms across his chest. Everybody says that. Annie stood beside the man, close enough to see the tired lines around his eyes. Just then, Ray Collins, the gas attendant, came in through the side door, wiping his hands with an old red rag. He had been outside checking the air hose, but apparently he had heard enough of the conversation to give himself permission to join in. What's going on? Ray asked. Derek nodded toward the man. He says he's got a fancy SUV, but no wallet, no phone, and no gas. Wants $5. Ray looked through the glass window, saw the black SUV, then turned back and studied the man from head to toe. His mouth twisted into a mocking smile. Oh, I've seen this trick plenty of times, Ray said. Guy pulls up in a nice car, tells a sad little story, gets some soft-hearted person to hand him money, then drives off laughing behind the wheel. It's a scam. The man's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. Sir, I'm not trying to scam anyone. Ray snorted. You expect us to believe you can afford that vehicle but can't scrape together a few dollars for gas? I really left my wallet. Sure you did. My phone died. Of course it did. The man reached into his jacket pocket, took out his phone, and held it up for them to see. The screen was black. He pressed the power button once, then held it longer. Nothing happened. I tried calling earlier, he said. It shut off before I could finish my last call. Ray shook his head. You've got an answer for everything, don't you? Wallet's forgotten. Phone's dead. SUV's empty. What's next? Your dog ate your credit card? Derek gave a short laugh. A man standing near the coffee machine glanced over. A woman holding a pack of gum stopped near the door. People often liked watching a scene like this, as long as it did not cost them anything. The man looked at Annie, perhaps because she was the only person in the store who was not smiling. Miss, he said, his voice lower now, almost embarrassed. I hate to ask you this. I truly do. But could I borrow $5 from you? Just $5. I'll pay it back. I only need enough gas to get out of here. Ray slung the rag over his shoulder and stared at him. Good Lord. Now you're trying to take the last $5 from a girl's pocket? That's low, man. Real low. The man looked hurt by that, but he did not snap back. I'm not trying to take anything from her, he said. I'm only asking for help. From her? Ray pointed at Annie. Do you see where she works? You think she's standing here because she has extra money to hand out to strangers? Ray, Annie said quietly. But Ray kept going. No, I'm serious. You drive in here, dressed like you just lost a bet on your whole life, and now you're asking a girl for $5? Trying to scam a kid? Go somewhere else. Let people do their jobs. Those words made Annie lower her eyes to her own hands. She had been counting the money in her head all evening. Her paycheck was already too small before she even received it. Miss Rose's medicine had gone up again. The electric bill was still waiting on the kitchen table, and just 10 minutes earlier, her phone had buzzed with a message she still had not found the courage to answer. Sweetheart, I checked the savings account. It's all gone. I'm sorry. Annie had stared at that message until the letters blurred. The savings could not have just disappeared. It was supposed to carry them through one more month. One more refill of medicine. One more trip to the grocery store. One more week for Miss Rose to pretend she was not afraid. Annie slowly reached into her jacket pocket. She hesitated. Her fingertips touched the folded bill first, then the coins underneath. She pulled everything out and opened her palm. 4 quarters, a few loose coins, one old dollar bill folded in half. She counted them, even though she did not want to. $5, exactly $5. That was the money she had planned to use after her shift. A small sandwich. Maybe a bottle of water if she chose the cheapest one. Not a real dinner, just something to keep her stomach from aching on the bike ride home. She let out a soft breath. Well, she murmured, there goes dinner. The man heard her. His face changed. Ray stepped closer before Annie could say anything else. Don't do it, Annie, he said. I'm telling you. This is a scam. Don't trust him. People like this know exactly who to ask. They look for someone kind, someone tired, someone who doesn't want to say no. The man looked at Ray, then back at Annie. I asked everyone outside, he said. A man by the diesel pump. A woman getting into a minivan. Your manager, too. Everyone turned away. I wouldn't ask if I had another way. Right, Ray said. And every scammer says that with the same sad face. Annie looked at the dead phone in the man's hand. You really can't call anyone, she asked. Your wife? A coworker? A friend? I tried before the phone died, the man replied. I'm on my way to a meeting on the other side of town. I left in too much of a hurry. My wallet is on my desk at home. I know it sounds careless, but it's the truth. Ray let out a bitter laugh. You hear that? No wallet, no phone, no gas. And now, an important meeting too. Every excuse fits perfectly. The man did not argue anymore. He just stood there, tired of defending his truth to people who had already decided it was a lie. Annie understood that feeling. She looked through the window toward the SUV parked beside pump number 3. Then she looked back at the man beside her. Ray lowered his voice. Annie, listen to me. This is a scam. Don't trust him. Annie held the $5 tightly in her hand. For one moment, she thought about the sandwich she would not buy. She thought about the ride home on her old bicycle. She thought about Miss Rose and the words the old woman had once told her. Being poor is nothing to be ashamed of, child. Losing your heart is. Then Annie placed the money on the counter. Pump 3, she said. Derek stared at her. You're really going to pay for him? Yes. Ray shook his head. Annie, come on. She looked at him. Pump 3, Ray. Ray stopped wiping his hands. I'm not helping him scam you. You're not helping him, Annie said. You're pumping gas for me. That silenced him. Derek snorted, took the money, and rang it up. 5 on 3, he muttered. The man did not take the money directly. He looked at the receipt in Annie's hand, then down at the empty pocket of her jacket. I'll pay this back, he said. Annie handed him the receipt. Then don't forget where you bought it. I won't forget, Ray muttered. Sure you won't. The man turned and walked out to pump number 3. Ray followed only far enough to make sure the pump worked. The man put exactly $5 worth of gas into the SUV, then carefully returned the nozzle to its place. After that, he got into the driver's seat. The engine started on the first try. Before driving away, he looked through the glass one more time. Annie was still standing near the register, her jacket pocket empty, her stomach aching with hunger, and her phone heavy in her pocket with bad news she still did not know how to answer. She gave him a small nod, just enough to let him know he could go. The man nodded back. Then the black SUV rolled out onto the road. Ray watched until the vehicle disappeared from sight. You'll see, he said. Annie tucked the copy of the receipt into the slot beside the register, her eyes fixed on the $5 amount still glowing on the screen. Maybe, she said softly. Ray was still shaking his head when Annie returned behind the counter. You know what your problem is? He said. Annie took a roll of coins from the drawer beneath the counter and placed it beside the register. I have more than one problem, she replied. You trust people too easily. No, Annie said, checking the receipt paper again. I just don't like seeing someone stranded with no one willing to help. Derek Miller gave a small laugh from behind the register, but there was nothing cheerful in it. That's touching, he said. You should put that on a greeting card. You'd better hope that little act of kindness doesn't come back to bite you. It was my money. Yeah, you keep repeating that. Because it's true. Derek leaned forward and lowered his voice so the two customers near the coffee machine could not hear every word. The truth doesn't matter if the numbers don't match, Annie. My mother only cares about the numbers. Annie's jaw tightened. She knew that tone. Derek used it when he wanted someone to be afraid, but did not want to be heard making a threat. He liked pushing people to the edge of what they could endure, as long as they were not loud enough to turn it into a scene. The numbers will match, she said. We'll see. Derek turned away, but before he fully turned, Annie still caught the thin smile on his lips. She went back to work. That was what Annie had always done. When men looked down on her, she straightened the paper cups. When customers stared at her as if she did not belong there, she wiped the counter. When worry rose in her chest, she found something with a barcode, turned it the right way, and put it in its proper place. The night continued in its familiar rhythm. A truck driver bought black coffee and 2 hot dogs from the warmer. A woman in a nurse's uniform paid for gas with coins and apologized twice. Even though Annie told her there was nothing to apologize for, a teenage boy tried to buy beer with an ID that looked as if it had been printed in somebody's garage. Derek told him to get lost, then laughed after the door closed. Annie tried not to think about the man in the SUV, but she thought about him anyway. She thought about the way he had held the receipt so carefully. She thought about how he had not gotten angry when people laughed at him. She thought about how his face had changed when he realized those $5 were all she had. She had met too many men who were willing to take from a hungry girl without feeling a thing. But that man was different. He looked as if those $5 weighed heavier in his hands than they had in hers. At 10:17, Annie's phone buzzed again. She waited until Derek stepped into the back office before taking it out to look. "Have you eaten yet?" Miss Rose had texted. Annie stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. "Not yet. I'll eat later." She deleted it. Then she typed, "Yes, ma'am." The lie made her chest ache, but it still felt easier than the truth. Miss Rose already had too much to worry about tonight. Annie slipped the phone back into her jacket pocket and reached for the rag beneath the counter. The pocket that had held $5 was now empty. Every time her fingertips brushed the hollow fabric, she remembered. Ray came back inside after changing the trash bag near the pumps. He stopped at the coffee counter and poured himself half a cup without paying. No one said anything. Annie noticed things like that. She noticed Derek taking scratch-off tickets and saying he would pay later. She noticed Marlene Miller rounding down the minutes on Annie's time card, but rounding up whenever Annie was late. She noticed who got watched and who got trusted without having to prove anything. Ray took a sip of coffee and looked at her over the rim of the cup. "Don't sulk. I was only trying to save you." "I'm not sulking. You're awfully quiet. I'm working. That man is gone, Annie. You know that, right?" She straightened a row of mints near the register. "Most people leave after they buy gas. You know what I mean." She did not answer. Ray sighed as if she were a niece who had disappointed him. "I've seen too many people get fooled. You have a good heart. People like that can smell it on you." Annie looked at him. "Maybe. But if every good person locks up their heart, what's left out here?" Ray did not have an easy answer for that, so he drank his coffee. Near midnight, the gas station began to empty. Annie's hunger came in waves. The first wave was sharp, twisting in her stomach. The second made her a little lightheaded. By the third, she could barely feel it anymore, unless she bent down too quickly. She placed napkins into the holder, wiped spilled sugar from the coffee counter, and pretended she did not see the wrapped turkey sandwich in the cooler. But Derek saw her looking. "Want me to put it on your tab?" he asked. "I don't have a tab." "No, but you've got a charity fund now." Ray let out a short laugh, then stopped when Annie turned to look at him. She walked to the cooler, rearranged the sandwiches, and closed the door. "I'm fine." Derek came around the counter with a clipboard in his hand. End of shift. Countdown. Annie washed her hands in the small sink in the back, dried them with a paper towel, and stood in front of the register. She preferred counting the drawer when Derek was not standing too close. But tonight, Derek stood there, watching every move she made. "Don't stand so close," Annie said. "I'm the shift manager. You can manage from 2 steps away." He smiled. So sensitive. She counted the 20s, 10s, 5s, and 1s. Then the coins. Then the card receipts. Everything matched the transaction tape. For one brief moment, she felt relieved. Then Derek reached across the counter. "Let me check." Annie kept her hand on the drawer. "I just finished counting it. And now I'm counting it again." Ray stood near the door, suddenly very interested in the floor. Derek counted slower than necessary. Halfway through, the phone in the back office rang. Derek looked toward it, then looked at Annie. "Go get that. I'm counting money." I said, "Answer the phone." Annie did not like leaving the drawer open. But if she refused, it would become something bigger. And she was too tired for another fight. She stepped into the back office and picked up the phone. "Miller's Gas, Mart." There was only static, then a click. The call ended. When she came back, Derek had closed the drawer. "We're short," he said. Annie stopped. "No, we're not. $5. Ray rubbed the back of his neck. Annie looked at Derek's face, and she understood the expression there before he finished speaking. Open the drawer. I already counted it. Open it. Derek gave a small smile. Be careful how you talk to me. You sent me to answer a call that had already disconnected. I sent you to do your job. The drawer matched before I left. Funny, it doesn't now. Annie turned to Ray. You saw me count it. Ray did not meet her eyes. I didn't see the final number. You were standing right there. I said I didn't see it. Derek tapped his pen against the clipboard. Short $5 right after you gave $5 to a stranger. Doesn't look good. That was my $5. Then why is the drawer short the same amount? Because you took it out. If Annie's story touched your heart, please like this video, comment where you are watching from, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories about kindness, dignity, and justice. The words slipped out before Annie could soften them. Derek's face changed at once. Are you accusing me? I'm asking you to open the drawer and count it again in front of the camera. He glanced up at the black dome camera in the corner of the ceiling, then looked back at her. The camera is malfunctioning. It's been working all night. Now you're a technician too? Ray cleared his throat. Annie, maybe just let Mrs. Miller handle this tomorrow. Annie turned to him. You know I didn't take anything. Under the cold white lights, Ray looked older. I know you gave away $5 you couldn't afford to give. That is not the same thing. Derek wrote something on the clipboard. I'll leave a note for my mother. She can decide whether to take it out of your paycheck. Anger rose in Annie so quickly that it almost frightened her. Not just because of $5. Because those $5 were being turned into an excuse to stain her name. You can't put this on me. Derek set the clipboard down. Do you still want this job? The question hung in the air. Clear, ugly, and painfully familiar. Annie thought about Miss Rose's medicine. She thought about the empty savings account. She thought about the sandwich she had not bought. She thought about the bicycle waiting outside. She thought about all the times she had swallowed her words because silence was the price of survival. Then she thought about the man at pump number 3, and how no one had believed him either. I want to see the camera footage, she said. Derek leaned closer. And I want my employees to know their place. Ray looked toward the door as if he were hoping some customer would walk in and save him from having to choose a side. But no one came in. Derek tore the first sheet from the clipboard and pushed it toward Annie. Sign this, acknowledging that you are aware of the shortage. Annie looked at the paper. Her name had already been written at the top. She pushed it back. No. You sure? Yes. Derek nodded, as if that was the answer he had been waiting for. Then don't be surprised if my mother tells you not to come back. Annie clocked out at 12:08. She took her jacket from the hook, lifted her backpack onto her shoulder, and stepped outside into the warm, damp Georgia night. Her old bicycle leaned against the side wall beneath the flickering security light. For a few seconds, she stood still, one hand on the handlebar and the other over her empty jacket pocket. Then she climbed onto the bike and rode home. She was so hungry she felt hollow inside, so angry she knew she would not be able to sleep. And so tired she knew Miss Rose would see the truth the moment she opened the door. By the time Annie reached the little house on Briar Lane, her legs were shaking more from hunger than the ride. The porch light was on, as always. Grandma Rose believed a porch light was a promise. No matter how bad the day got, someone was still expected home. Annie leaned her bicycle against the railing and stood there for a moment before opening the door. Through the thin curtains, she could see the kitchen lamp glowing over the table. Grandma Rose was awake. Of course she was. Annie had hoped, foolishly, that the old woman might have fallen asleep in her chair with the television murmuring, but Rose Carter had raised children, buried people she loved, and survived enough bad news to know when silence had weight. Annie stepped inside quietly. The house smelled faintly of peppermint tea and old wood. A box fan pushed warm air from the hallway into the kitchen. Grandma Rose sat at the table in her blue robe, one hand wrapped around a mug, the other resting on a folded stack of bills. You're late, Rose said. Not by much. Late enough for a grandmother. Annie hung her jacket on the back of a chair and tried not to look at the bills. Register took longer. Grandma Rose studied her face. You eat? Annie moved toward the sink and turned on the tap, letting the water run over her hands even though they were clean. I wasn't that hungry. Annie. There it was. Not loud, not angry. Just her name. Spoken by the one person who knew how to pull the truth out without reaching. Annie shut off the water. Grandma Rose pushed the mug aside. Come sit down. I'm sweaty from the ride. And I'm old. Sit. Annie sat. For a while, neither of them spoke. The old wall clock above the stove ticked too loudly. A car passed outside. Then the street went quiet again. Annie looked at the table and saw the medicine bottles lined up near the napkin holder. 3 orange bottles. 1 white box of test strips. A receipt from the pharmacy tucked beneath them. Rose followed her eyes and gave a tired smile. Don't stare at those like they're rattlesnakes. They cost like rattlesnakes. That they do. Annie pressed her hands together in her lap. I saw your text. I figured. You should have told me sooner. I was trying to give you one peaceful shift. Annie almost laughed, but it came out thin. Didn't work. Grandma Rose leaned back slowly. Her knees hurt when she moved. Annie could hear it in the small breath she took. Tell me. So Annie told her. Not all at once. At first, only pieces. A man came in. SUV. Out by pump 3. Said he forgot his wallet. Phone dead. Needed $5. Derek laughed. Ray called it a scam. Everyone watched. Annie still had her $5. Then she did not. Grandma Rose listened without interrupting. She had that gift. She could sit through a whole storm of words and wait for the one sentence that mattered. When Annie finished, Rose asked, Was he lying? I don't know. That's not what I asked. Annie looked up. I don't think so. Why? He looked tired. A lot of liars look tired. I know. Annie rubbed her thumb across the edge of the table. But he didn't act like he was trying to win. He acted like he hated asking. Rose nodded once, as if that made sense to her. And then? She asked. Annie swallowed. Derek said the drawer was short. Grandma Rose's face changed. Was it? No. You sure? I counted it. It matched. Then he sent me to answer the office phone. Deadline. When I came back, he said it was short $5. Rose's hand tightened around the mug. Ray saw? He saw enough. Did he say so? No. Rose closed her eyes for a moment. And when she opened them, Annie saw something harder than sadness there. That boy has been taking little bites out of people for years. Derek? Men like Derek. Different names, same teeth. Annie looked away. He wants me to sign a paper saying I acknowledge the shortage. You sign it? No. Good. He said his mother might tell me not to come back. Grandma Rose was quiet. Outside, somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and stopped. Annie waited for the practical answer, the one she dreaded. Go back. Apologize. Sign whatever they want. We need the money. Pride does not pay for medicine. Instead, Rose reached across the table and took Annie's hand. Baby, there's a difference between swallowing your pride and letting somebody feed you shame. Annie's eyes burned. She hated that they did. We need that job. I know. We need the money. I know that too. The savings are gone. Rose looked at the folded bills. Yes. What are we supposed to do? For tonight, we breathe. In the morning, we think. Annie shook her head. I gave away dinner money, Grandma. I know. That was stupid. No. You didn't even hear all of it. I heard enough. Annie pulled her hand back and stood, suddenly unable to sit still. You always say that. You always make it sound like being kind fixes things. It doesn't. It didn't fix the bills. It didn't fix your medicine. It didn't stop Derek from setting me up. It just made me hungry and maybe cost me my job. Rose let the words pass through the room. Then she said, Come here. I'm not a child. No, you're not. That's why I'm asking instead of dragging you. Annie stayed where she was for 2 breaths, then came around the table. Rose reached up and touched her cheek. Her palm was warm and dry. I never told you kindness fixes everything, Rose said. Kindness is not a hammer. It won't knock down every locked door. But it keeps you from becoming the kind of person who locks the door on somebody else. Annie looked at the floor. Listen to me, Rose continued. Poor is not the shame. Being lied on is not the shame. Being hungry is not the shame. The shame is seeing somebody stranded and letting your heart get small. Because the world has been mean to you. Annie wiped her face quickly with the back of her hand. I don't know if I can keep doing this. Doing what? Trying to be decent while people act like I'm dirt. Grandma Rose's mouth trembled, but her voice stayed steady. Then don't try to be decent for them. Be decent because it belongs to you. They don't get to take that. The words settled slowly. Annie sat down again, this time closer. Rose pushed her mug toward her. Drink. It's your tea. It's warm water with a memory of peppermint. Drink. Annie took a sip. It tasted weak and sweet. Rose had put sugar in it. Not much. Enough to make Annie notice. There's half a biscuit in the oven, Rose said. Annie looked up. You ate? I ate enough. Grandma, don't grandma me. It's wrapped in foil. I saved it because I knew you'd come home pretending your stomach wasn't chewing on itself. Annie went to the oven and found the biscuit wrapped just as Rose said. It was small and a little dry, left over from breakfast. But she ate it slowly at the counter because if she sat down again she might cry harder. Rose watched her. Tomorrow, you go back. Annie nearly choked. What? You go back to that station. You just said not to let them feed me shame. That's right, so don't. You walk in standing straight, and you ask for the camera. Derek said it's acting up. Then you ask Mrs. Miller. If she says no, you ask why. If they fire you, let them fire you with your head up and a lie in their mouth, not your signature on their paper. Annie took another bite and chewed slowly. Rose pointed toward the bills. Money is tight, I won't dress it up. But I have lived long enough to know this. When people steal your name, they take more than wages. You fight for your name first. The rest, we figure out. Annie looked at her grandmother, at the robe worn thin at the elbows, at the hands that had cooked in school kitchens for 32 years, at the eyes that still managed to hold light after so much loss. What if nobody believes me? Rose smiled then, tired but real. Somebody always sees. Might not be the person you expect. Might not be when you want. But truth has a way of leaving footprints. Annie thought of the black dome camera in the ceiling corner. She thought of Derek sending her into the back office. She thought of Ray looking away. I'm scared, she said. I know. I hate that. Only fools aren't scared when something matters. Annie finished the biscuit. It did not fill her, but it steadied her. Rose stood slowly, and Annie moved at once to help her. The old woman waved her off, then accepted the help anyway. At the hallway, Rose paused. What was his name? The man with the SUV? He didn't say. Rose looked back. But he said he'd remember? Yes. Then let him remember. You remember who you are. Annie lay awake long after the house went quiet. The ceiling fan clicked with every turn. Her phone sat on the crate beside her bed. Dark now. She should have slept. Her body needed it. But her mind kept returning to the same places. Pump 3. The $5 sale, Derek's smile, Grandma Rose's hand on hers. Near dawn, Annie finally sat up. She pulled her work shirt from the chair, smoothed the wrinkles with her hands, and found her name stitched above the pocket. Annie, not girl, not thief, not charity case, Annie Carter. By 7:30, she was on her bike again, riding toward Miller's Gas and Mart with the morning sun low over Pine Hollow and Grandma Rose's words moving with every turn of the pedals. Fight for your name first. The rest, we figure out. Annie reached Miller's Gas and Mart just before 8. The morning shift had already begun, but the station looked half asleep. The glass door was streaked with old fingerprints. The coffee pots were full but burned at the bottom. 2 pickups sat at the pumps, and a delivery truck idled near the side entrance with its back door open. Everything looked ordinary, which made Annie feel even more out of place. Her whole night had tilted, but the store had simply kept selling gas, cigarettes, and cheap breakfast biscuits as if nothing had happened. She locked her bike to the metal rail near the ice machine and smoothed the front of her work shirt. Her name was stitched above the pocket in blue thread. Annie. She touched it once before walking in. The bell over the door rang. Derek Miller was behind the counter, drinking coffee from a foam cup. He looked up and smiled like he had been waiting. Well, look who decided to show. Annie stopped near the front mat. I'm scheduled. I figured you might be too embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed. Derek lifted his eyebrows. That makes one of us. Ray Collins stood near the hot food case, restocking sausage biscuits. He saw Annie, then looked away too fast. His face told her he remembered everything and wanted none of it. Annie walked to the counter and set her backpack underneath, but she did not clock in. Not yet. I want to see the camera from last night, she said. Derek took a slow sip of coffee. Good morning to you too. I want to see the camera. Ray shut the food case harder than he needed to. Annie, maybe don't start first thing. I'm not starting anything. I'm asking for what proves I didn't take money. Derek leaned on the register. Camera's been acting up. It was working last night. The red light was on. Red light doesn't mean it recorded. Then open the system and show me. He gave her a flat look. You don't tell me what to open. The delivery driver, a man with a gray beard and a clipboard, paused near the chip rack. He had been counting boxes, but now his pen stopped moving. Annie felt his attention and hated that she had become the morning's entertainment. I'm not signing that paper, she said. Derek's smile thinned. Then you might not be working here much longer. The office door opened before Annie could answer. Marlene Miller stepped out with a stack of invoices in her hand. She was dressed in beige slacks, a pale yellow blouse, and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. Her hair was sprayed into place like weather could not touch it. She looked at Annie the way a person looked at a spill that had not been cleaned up. You're early, Marlene said. I came to talk about last night. So did Derek. I'm sure he did. Marlene's eyes sharpened. Watch your tone. Annie felt Grandma Rose's words push against her back. Fight for your name first. My drawer matched when I counted it. Annie said. Derek sent me to answer a dead phone. When I came back, he said it was short $5. I want the camera checked. Marlene set the invoices on the counter. The equipment has been unreliable. It was reliable enough to watch me all week. Ray shifted his weight. Derek looked at him, and Ray suddenly found interest in the biscuit labels. Marlene removed her glasses. Annie, you are a young woman with a job many girls would be grateful to have. I suggest you think carefully before accusing management of wrongdoing. I'm not accusing management. I'm asking to see what happened. You gave money to a stranger during your shift. My money. You created confusion around the register. I paid for gas. And now the drawer is short by the same amount. Annie breathed in slowly. Because somebody made it short. The delivery driver muttered something under his breath. Not quite words, but Marlene heard enough to look at him. Can I help you, Mr. Dawson? He cleared his throat. Just dropping off bread. Then drop it off. He went back to his clipboard. Marlene turned back to Annie. You will sign the acknowledgement form, and we will deduct the shortage from your wages. After that, we can consider whether you stay on the schedule. No, the word came out small, but it landed. Derek set his cup down. No? Annie looked at him. No. Marlene stared at her for a long second, then reached beneath the counter and pulled out the paper from last night. Annie's name was still at the top. The blank signature line waited at the bottom like a trap. This is not an admission of theft, Marlene said. What is it? It says there was a shortage during your shift, and after I sign it, you'll say I admitted responsibility. Marlene smiled without warmth. You seem to have already decided everyone is against you. Annie glanced at Ray. He still would not look at her. Not everyone has to be against me. Some people just have to stay quiet. That hit Ray. His hand stopped on the tray of biscuits. Derek pushed the paper closer. Sign it or leave. A customer near the coffee machine, an older white man in a John Deere cap, turned around. All this over $5? Annie looked at him. Yes, sir. He blinked, surprised that she had answered with respect instead of shame. She continued, because it's not just $5 when somebody uses it to call you a thief. The man said nothing after that. He put a lid on his coffee and kept his eyes down. Marlene's voice cooled. You are making a scene. No, ma'am. I'm asking for the truth in the same building where you say cameras are for honesty. Derek laughed once. You practicing speeches now? Annie turned to him. Open the camera system. I told you, it's down. Then let me see that it's down. Marlene stepped between them. Enough. You are not clocking in today. Annie felt the words like a door closing. Am I fired? You are suspended pending review. Without pay? That is what suspended means. Ray finally looked up. There was guilt in his eyes, but guilt did not pay bills, and it did not speak. Annie nodded slowly. Then put that in writing. Marlene's mouth tightened. Excuse me? If you're suspending me, write it down. If you're saying I caused a shortage, write that down too. And write that I asked for the camera, and you refused. Derek's face changed. He had expected tears, maybe shouting. Not this. Marlene folded the paper in half. You need to leave. I will. After you write it down. You think you're in charge here? No, that's the problem. For a moment, Annie thought Marlene might slap her. Not because Marlene was the sort to lose control in public, but because the truth had stepped too close to her face. Instead, Marlene picked up the store phone. If you do not leave, I'll call Deputy Voss. Annie knew Deputy Carl Voss. He came in most mornings for coffee. called Derek son, and watched Annie's hands whenever she counted change. He and Marlene spoke like old friends. If he came, the story would already be written before Annie opened her mouth. Ray spoke quietly. Annie, just go home. Don't make it worse. She looked at him. For who? He did not answer. The bell over the door rang. A young mother came in holding a little boy's hand. She sensed the tension and slowed, then guided the child toward the cooler without making eye contact. Annie wondered how many people had done that last night with the man in his SUV. How many had seen something wrong and decided it was safer to buy their drink and leave. Marlene dialed one number, then another. Annie picked up her backpack. Her hands were steady now. That surprised her. Inside, she was shaking, but her hands had chosen another side. I'm leaving, she said, but I'll be back for my paycheck. Derek smirked. If there's anything left after the shortage. She turned at the door. You know there was no shortage. He held her eyes for half a second too long. That was the closest thing to a confession she would get. Outside, the morning air was already warm. Annie unlocked her bike, but she did not climb on right away. She stood beside the ice machine and looked at Pump 3. The black SUV was gone. No sign of the man. No sign that anything important had happened there except a $5 sale in one girl's empty pocket. Through the window, she saw Marlene speaking into the phone. Derek stood beside her, arms crossed. Ray was at the hot case, but he was not moving. The delivery driver, Mr. Dawson, carried empty crates back to his truck. As he passed Annie, he slowed. I heard some of it, he said. Annie turned. He kept his voice low. I don't know about the drawer, but I know the cameras weren't down yesterday. Derek asked me to move my truck because one of them could see the loading door. Annie felt her pulse shift. Would you say that if someone asked? Mr. Dawson looked back at the store. Fear crossed his face, plain and familiar. I deliver here 3 times a week. I understand. He started to walk away, then stopped. Doesn't mean I didn't hear it. He climbed into his truck and drove off. Annie stood there with both hands on her bike handles. Truth had footprints, Grandma Rose had said. Maybe this was one. Not enough to save her. Not yet, but enough to keep her from thinking she had imagined everything. She rode home slower than she had come. At the first stop sign, her phone buzzed. For one wild second, she thought it might be the man from the SUV, though he did not have her number and she did not know his name. It was Grandma Rose. How did it go? Annie stopped under the shade of a pecan tree and typed back. They suspended me. I didn't sign. The answer came after a minute. Come home. We'll make coffee. Annie stared at the words and felt something in her chest loosen and ache at the same time. Coffee meant weak coffee. Maybe yesterday's grounds boiled again. It meant sitting at the kitchen table with bills they could not pay. It meant telling the truth out loud and having at least one person believe it. She put the phone away and pedaled on. Behind her, at Miller's Gas and Mart, the morning went back to looking ordinary. Cars pulled in, pumps clicked, coffee poured, people paid and left. But inside the small black dome above the register, if Derek had not already found a way to erase it, last night was still waiting. And somewhere beyond Pine Hollow, a man with a dead phone now charging and a wallet finally back in his hand would soon remember the girl who had given him her last $5. Grandma Rose had coffee waiting when Annie came through the door, but it was not really coffee. It was yesterday's grounds boiled again until the water turned brown enough to pretend. Annie drank it anyway because Rose had poured it into the good mug, the one with a faded red cardinal on the side, and that meant her grandmother was trying to make bad news sit down politely. Rose listened while Annie told her everything. The paper, the camera, Marlene reaching for the phone, Derek smiling like he had already won, Ray looking away, Mr. Dawson saying the cameras had worked the day before but being too afraid to say more inside. When Annie finished, Rose tapped one finger against the table. That delivery man gave you something. He gave me a half-truth. Sometimes half a truth is a seed. You don't throw it away just because it isn't a tree yet. Annie wrapped both hands around the mug. They suspended me without pay. I heard. We've got rent in 9 days. I know. And your medicine. I know that too. Annie looked at the orange bottles lined against the wall. You keep saying you know, but knowing doesn't change the numbers. No, Rose said, but panic doesn't either. That made Annie quiet. Not because it fixed anything, but because Grandma Rose had a way of putting a hand on a wild thought and making it sit. The house felt smaller in daylight. The linoleum in the kitchen curled up near the back door. The refrigerator hummed too loudly. There was a crack in the window above the sink that Rose had covered with clear tape, and in the sunlight the tape showed every wrinkle. Annie had grown up in that house. She knew which floorboards complained, which cabinet stuck, which burner on the stove leaned to one side. She loved it and hated how hard it was to keep. Rose reached for the stack of bills and sorted them into piles. Rent, electric, pharmacy, water. Don't do that right now. Baby, bills don't leave because you stop looking. They don't leave when we look either. Rose gave her a sideways glance. You getting smart with me? A little. Good. Means you still got blood moving. Annie almost smiled. Then her phone buzzed. For a second, both of them looked at it. It was not a number she knew, just a message from one of the girls who used to work weekends at the station. Heard Derek said you got caught stealing from the drawer. Is that true? Annie stared at the screen until her thumb went numb. Rose watched her face. What is it? Annie handed the phone over. Rose read it slowly. Her mouth closed tight. That boy works fast, Rose said. Annie took the phone back and typed, No, I didn't steal anything. She waited. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Girl, I figured. He said stuff about me too when I left. Annie sat up. What? Rose asked. She says he did it to her too. Ask her. Annie typed. What did he say? The answer came a minute later. Said my drawer was short. I was too tired to fight. They took it out of my last check. Annie felt something cold move through her. Not surprise. Recognition. Rose leaned back. There's another footprint. Annie read the message again. Her name is Keisha. She worked Saturdays last year. Would she talk? I don't know. Ask. Annie did. The answer took longer this time. Maybe. Depends who's asking. Annie put the phone down, not because she was done, but because her hands were shaking. What had happened to her was not new. That made it worse and better at the same time. Worse because Derek and Marlene had been doing it long enough to get comfortable. Better because a lie repeated too many times left a pattern. By noon, 2 more messages had come in. One from a former night cashier named Denise, who said Marlene had held back her final check over a missing gas card that later turned up in the office. Another from a man named Luis, who had worked the pumps before Ray, who said Derek used to borrow cash from the drawer and write it down on sticky notes that vanished before closing. Annie read each one at the table while Rose wrote names on the back of an old church bulletin. Keisha, Denise, Luis, Mr. Dawson, Ray maybe. Not Ray, Annie said. Rose looked up. Maybe does not mean yes. It means don't close the door. He stood there. Fear makes people small. Then he should grow. Rose's eyes softened. He should, but you can't make people brave by hating them first. Annie did not answer because she wanted to hate Ray. It was easier than admitting she had wanted him to speak up. There was a special kind of hurt in being failed by someone who knew better. That afternoon, Annie changed out of her work shirt and washed it by hand in the sink. She did not know why. She was suspended. She might be fired. Still, she rubbed soap into the collar and rinsed it until the water ran clear. Rose noticed from the doorway. You planning to go back? I don't know. You washing that shirt like you do. Annie wrung it out. I don't want them saying I was dirty too. Rose nodded, as if that made perfect sense. At 3 o'clock, Annie's stomach cramped. Rose made grits with more water than meal and split the last 2 slices of toast. Annie tried to give one back. Rose gave her a look that ended the discussion. You're not feeding me like I'm a child, Annie said. I fed you when you were a child. I'm experienced. You need to eat. So do you. They ate at the table with the fan turning slowly above them. Outside, Mrs. Bell from next door waved through the screen door while carrying a laundry basket. Annie waved back, hoping her face did not show how close she was to falling apart. By late afternoon, the messages had slowed. Annie sat on the porch steps with her phone in her hand, reading the same lines again and again. The town sounded normal around her. A lawnmower 2 houses down, a dog barking behind a fence, a pickup with a bad muffler turning the corner. Normal life had a cruel way of continuing while yours came apart. Rose came out and lowered herself into the porch chair. Any word from the man with the SUV? Annie shook her head. He doesn't know my number. He knows the station. Maybe he got where he was going and forgot all about it. Maybe. You think he'll come back? Rose looked down the street. I think what he does is about him. What you did is about you. Annie leaned her elbows on her knees. That sounds like something people say when nothing good is coming. No, it's something old women say because we've seen good things come late and bad things come dressed nice. That made Annie glance at her. Bad things dressed nice? Rose nodded toward the direction of the station. Marlene wears pearls, doesn't she? Annie laughed despite herself. It came out small, but it was real. For a while, they sat without talking. The heat eased as the sun began sliding lower. Annie's phone buzzed again. This time it was an email notification from the community college she had once applied to and never attended. A reminder about late registration. She almost deleted it, then opened it by mistake. The subject line sat on the screen like a life from another version of herself. Fall enrollment closes soon. She stared until Rose asked, "What now?" "School." Rose did not ask if she wanted to go. She knew. Annie had kept the old course catalog in her dresser drawer for 2 years, folded open to nursing assistant programs, business administration, medical billing, anything that sounded like a door. "You should keep that," Rose said. "It costs money." "Most doors do. We don't have money for the porch step, Grandma." "I didn't say walk through it today. I said don't throw away the address." Annie closed the email but did not delete it. Near 6, Ray called. Annie let it ring twice before answering. "What?" There was a pause. "You all right?" "No." "Yeah, I guess not." She waited. Ray cleared his throat. "Derek's been running his mouth. I heard. I didn't say nothing." "That's the problem, Ray." Another silence. "I got a family," he said. "So do I." "I know." "No, you don't. If you knew, you would have said what you saw." Ray exhaled. "I didn't see him take it. You saw me count." "I saw some." "Ray." He lowered his voice. "Listen, Derek went into the office after you left. He was messing with the camera box." Annie sat up straight. Rose turned toward her. "When?" Annie asked. "This morning. After Marlene called Voss, but before the deputy came by." "Deputy Voss came?" "Yeah, just for coffee, they said." "Of course. I don't know what Derek did, but he had the cabinet open." Annie gripped the phone. "Would you say that tomorrow?" Ray did not answer. "Ray, I'm trying to help you now." "No. You're trying to feel better." That landed. She heard him breathe through his nose. "Maybe," he said, "but it's still true." Annie looked at Grandma Rose, who gave a small nod. "Thank you for telling me," Annie said. Ray sounded relieved and ashamed at once. "Annie? What? I should have said something last night." "Yes," she said. She hung up before he could apologize his way out of the truth. Rose looked at her. Another footprint. Maybe one Derek already erased. Maybe. But people who erase things are admitting there was something there. Annie repeated that silently. People who erase things are admitting there was something there. By evening, Annie had written everything down in a spiral notebook. The time she counted the drawer. The dead office call. Derek's words. Marlene's refusal. Mr. Dawson's comment. Keisha's message. Ray's call. Her handwriting started neat, then grew darker as the pages filled. At the bottom, she wrote one sentence and underlined it twice. "I did not steal $5. Rose stood behind her and read it. "Good. It won't be enough. Maybe not alone. What else do we have?" Rose looked toward the window, where the last light sat on the street. "We have morning." Annie wanted something stronger than that. A lawyer. A video. A witness who was not afraid. The man in the SUV walking back through the door with proof she was not what they said. But all she had was morning, a notebook, and a grandmother who refused to let shame sit in their kitchen without a fight. That night, Annie hung her work shirt over the back of a chair to dry. The stitched name caught the lamplight. Annie. She touched it once before bed. Across town, Miller's Gas and Mart glowed under its white lights, selling gas to people who would never know what $5 had cost. In the back office, behind a locked cabinet, the camera system sat quiet. Maybe it still held the truth. Maybe Derek had already damaged it. Annie did not know. But on her bedside crate, beside her dead empty jacket pocket, and the phone full of messages, the spiral notebook waited. And somewhere far beyond the little house on Briar Lane, the man from the black SUV had finally reached a place with electricity, a charged phone, and people who answered when he called. Morning came too early, but Annie was awake before the alarm. She had not slept so much as drifted in and out of the same thoughts. Derek's hand near the drawer, Marlene's paper, Ray's call, the camera cabinet, the man in the SUV saying he would never forget. By 6:30, she was at the kitchen table with the spiral notebook open, reading her own handwriting as if it belonged to someone braver. Grandma Rose shuffled in wearing her robe and slippers, her hair tied back in a scarf. "You been up all night?" "Some. That means yes." Annie closed the notebook. "I'm going back." Rose did not look surprised. "To the station? I need my paycheck, and I want to ask again for the camera. You want me to come?" Annie shook her head too fast. "No. You need to rest." Rose gave her a look. "I mean it," Annie said. "If Deputy Voss shows up or Marlene starts talking down to me, I don't want you standing there getting upset." "Baby, I was getting upset before you were born." "I know. That's what I'm afraid of." Rose smiled a little, then reached for the kettle. "Eat first. There's not much. There's oatmeal. There's dust in a round box pretending to be oatmeal. Then we'll sweeten the dust." They shared one bowl, more water than oats, with a spoonful of brown sugar scraped from the corner of the bag. Annie tried to take less. Rose noticed and pushed the bowl back toward her. "Don't start. You need food with your medicine. And you need legs to ride that bicycle." Annie ate 2 more bites because arguing would waste strength. Afterward, she folded the pages she had written the day before and slid them into her backpack. Rose watched her from the stove. "You keep your voice steady," Rose said. "I'll try." "No, don't try. Do it. Folks like Marlene listen for shaking. If they hear it, they call it guilt." Annie nodded. "And if they say you're making trouble?" "I'll say I'm asking for the truth." Rose's eyes softened. "That's my girl." The ride to Miller's Gas and Mart felt different that morning. Annie noticed things she had passed 100 times without seeing. The church sign with missing letters, the barber shop still closed, the flag outside the post office hanging in still air, the old men sitting outside the diner with coffee cups and ball caps, watching cars go by like it was a duty. Pine Hollow was waking up slow, but Annie felt like she had been running for 2 days. When she turned onto the road by the station, she saw Deputy Carl Voss's cruiser parked near the side entrance. Her hands tightened on the handlebars. Deputy Voss was inside at the coffee counter, broad back turned, one thumb hooked into his belt. Derek stood beside him, talking low. Marlene was behind the counter even though she rarely worked mornings unless money or trouble was involved. Ray was outside near Pump 2, pretending to check windshield fluid displays. Annie locked her bike and walked in. The bell rang. Everyone looked. Deputy Voss turned first. He was in his late 40s, with a square face and a mustache that looked trimmed by habit more than care. He had known Marlene for years. He called her Marl when customers were not close enough to hear. Annie had seen him laugh with Derek over coffee, seen him wave through rolling stops, seen him ignore men drinking behind the laundromat and then ask black boys where they were headed at dusk. "Well," Voss said. "Morning, Annie." "Deputy." Marlene set both hands on the counter. "You were told not to come in today. I came for my paycheck and to ask again for the camera." Derek made a sound. "Here we go." Voss lifted his coffee. "Maybe lower the temperature before it rises." Annie looked at him. "I'm calm." "Good. Stay that way." It sounded like advice. It felt like a warning. Marlene opened the register drawer and removed a small envelope. "Your pay through your last completed shift. Minus the drawer shortage." Annie did not take it. "You deducted the $5. A documented shortage occurred during your shift. You refused to show the camera. The camera system is not your property." Annie took the spiral pages from her backpack and unfolded them. "I wrote down the timeline. I counted the drawer. It matched. Derek sent me to answer the office phone. The line was dead. When I came back, he said the drawer was short." Derek laughed. "You wrote yourself a little story?" Annie ignored him. "Mr. Dawson said the cameras were working yesterday. Ray called me last night and said Derek opened the camera cabinet after I left." Ray froze outside the window. Marlene's eyes moved to him, then back to Annie. "Ray said no such thing to me. He said it to me." Derek stepped forward. "You recording people now?" "No." "So it's your word." Annie met his eyes. "That's what you were counting on." The store went quiet. A customer near the cooler slowly put back a bottle of orange juice and pretended to read the label. Deputy Voss set his coffee down. "Annie, accusing someone of tampering with equipment is serious. So is accusing someone of stealing." He studied her. "Nobody said stealing. Marlene said shortage. Derek is telling people I stole. There's a difference only when it's convenient." For a second, Voss had no ready answer. Marlene did. "You have become very bold since giving away money that was not yours." Annie's voice stayed steady. "It was mine. Then why are we still discussing it?" Because you know the camera would prove it. Derek turned to Voss. See? This is what I was telling you. She's making a scene. Annie looked around. I'm not yelling. I'm not touching anything. I'm asking for the video. Ray came in then, slower than usual, wiping hands that were already clean. Marlene. She turned. Not now. Ray swallowed. Annie could see him fighting himself. I did tell her Derek was in the camera cabinet, he said. Derek snapped. What the hell, Ray? Ray looked at the floor. I'm saying what I saw. Marlene's face hardened. You saw a manager checking equipment. He had the cabinet open after Annie left. That is not a crime. No, Annie said. But it proves the cameras weren't just down and forgotten. Deputy Voss sighed like everyone had forced him into a chore. Let's not turn this into something bigger than it is. Annie turned to him. It's already bigger than $5. Voss looked at her for a long moment. You want my advice? No, sir. I want the camera checked. That answer changed the room, not loudly. But Derek straightened. Marlene's lips pressed thin, and Ray looked at Annie like she had stepped somewhere he would not have dared. Voss picked up his cup again. This is a private business. Unless Mrs. Miller wants to file a formal complaint, I'm not going through her camera system. Annie felt the trap close. If Marlene filed, Annie would be treated as suspect. If Marlene did not, the video stayed locked. Marlene slid the envelope across the counter. Take your pay and go home. Annie looked at the envelope. This is short. Yes. Then I'm not taking it as final pay. You don't have a choice. I do. I can refuse to sign. Marlene pulled out another paper. Then sign that you refuse payment. Annie almost laughed. You have a paper for everything except the truth. Derek moved fast enough that Ray took a step forward. You better watch your mouth. Voss set his cup down. Derek. The warning was mild. But Derek stopped. Not because he respected Annie. Because he respected the badge. Annie put her notebook pages back into her bag. I'm going to the labor office. Marlene's expression flickered. It was quick, but Annie saw it. The state office is 30 miles away, Marlene said. And they will ask for documentation. I have documentation. You have notes you wrote at your kitchen table. And names. Derek scoffed, but it came too late. Voss looked at Marlene now, and for the first time he seemed less certain this was only a young cashier making noise. Marl, maybe it's worth pulling the video just to put it to rest. Marlene turned on him with a smile so sharp it barely counted as one. Deputy, I appreciate your concern, but I run my own store. Before Voss could answer, the bell over the door rang again. Mr. Dawson, the delivery driver, stepped in holding his clipboard. He looked at Annie, then at the faces behind the counter, and seemed to regret walking through the door. Marlene said, Back door is open. He did not move toward it. I forgot to have yesterday's invoice signed. Derek reached for the clipboard. Dawson held it back. Also, Dawson said, clearing his throat, I don't want my name in anything, but she's right about the cameras. Yesterday morning, Derek told me not to park by the loading door because camera 2 had a clear view and Marlene didn't like trucks blocking it. Annie felt her heart thud. Marlene's face went still. Derek pointed at him. You need to mind your deliveries. Dawson looked embarrassed, but he stood his ground long enough to say, I am. That's why I know where I was parked. Ray stared at the floor. Voss rubbed his mustache. Marlene took the clipboard from Dawson and signed it hard enough that the pen scratched through the paper. Thank you, Mr. Dawson. You can leave. He left. Annie let the silence breathe for 1 second. Camera 2 was working. Marlene looked at Voss. This conversation is over. But the conversation did not feel over anymore. It felt like something under the floor had begun to crack. Annie picked up her backpack. I'll be at the labor office before lunch, Derek said. Good luck getting anybody to care. She turned at the door. People keep saying that like it makes what you did disappear. Outside, the heat had already begun to rise off the pavement. Annie unlocked her bike, with hands that trembled only after she was sure nobody inside could see. She had not won. The video was still locked away. Her pay was still short. Her job was still gone. But Ray had spoken. Dawson had spoken. Voss had heard enough to look uncomfortable. Marlene had lost the clean shape of her lie. Annie climbed on her bike. As she pushed toward the road, a black SUV turned off the highway 3 blocks away, followed by a dark sedan and another vehicle with tinted windows. Annie did not notice them at first. She was watching the pavement ahead, thinking about the state labor office, the 30-mile distance, and the fact that she had only enough strength for one more fight. Behind her, through the station window, Derek saw the vehicles first. His smile faded. The black SUV slowed as it approached Miller's Gas and Mart, and in the passenger seat sat the man who had borrowed $5 from Annie Carter. Annie was halfway across the lot when the black SUV turned in. At first, she only noticed the shine of it against the worn pumps and sun-faded signs. The same dark windows, the same front grille she had watched pull away the night before after $5 of gas and too much laughter from people who should have known better. Her foot slipped from the pedal, the bike wobbled. She caught herself and stood with one sneaker on the pavement. The SUV stopped. A dark sedan pulled in behind it. Then another vehicle with tinted windows. The whole station seemed to pause. Even the air hose near pump 2 stopped hissing. Inside, Derek Miller stood near the window, his face losing color. Ray Collins had one hand on the coffee counter and the other still holding his red rag. Deputy Voss turned slowly. Coffee forgotten. Marlene came out from behind the register with the envelope still in her hand. The rear door of the SUV opened first. A tall man in a navy suit stepped out, then moved aside. The man from last night got out next, but he did not look like the man from last night. The old gray jacket was gone. So were the dusty boots and faded jeans. He wore a dark tailored suit, a white shirt, and no tie. His hair was combed back, and his shoes caught the morning light. He still looked tired, but not helpless. There was a steadiness around him now that made the whole parking lot feel smaller. Annie did not move. A woman stepped out from the sedan behind him. She was in a cream-colored dress and low heels, with silver blonde hair pulled neatly at the back of her neck. She did not hurry. She looked around the station once, taking in the cracked pavement, the old pumps, the people watching through the glass, and then Annie. The man walked toward Annie first, not the store. "Miss Carter," he said. Annie blinked. She had not remembered giving him her last name. Then she recalled the name stitched on her shirt, the receipt, the way people had said it in the store. Her mouth went dry. "You came back," she said. "I told you I would." The woman came to stand beside him. Her eyes moved to Annie's bike, then to Annie's backpack, then to the envelope in Marlene's hand inside the store. "My name is Eleanor Harrington," she said. "This is my husband, William." Annie heard the name but did not understand its weight until the man in the navy suit behind them spoke quietly into his phone, and Derek's voice carried through the glass. "Harrington?" Marlene opened the door before anyone else could. The bell rang so hard it rattled. "Mr. Harrington?" she said, suddenly wearing a smile Annie had never seen on her face. "William Harrington?" William turned toward her. "Today, you recognize me." Marlene's smile faltered. "I'm sorry? Last night I was standing right there." He nodded toward the counter. "I asked for $5 of gas and a phone. You were not here, but your people represented your business clearly." Derek stepped out behind his mother. "Look, sir, if there was some misunderstanding." William's eyes moved to him. There was no misunderstanding. Derek stopped. Deputy Voss came out next, adjusting his belt. "Morning, Deputy Carl Voss." William gave him a brief nod. "Deputy." Voss looked at the vehicles, then at the suited man standing behind William, then back at William. His tone changed. "Everything all right here?" "That depends," William said. Eleanor looked at Annie again. "Are you all right?" Annie almost said yes because that was what she usually said when adults asked questions they did not really want answered. But Eleanor's face was different. She looked like she expected the truth and had time for it. "No, ma'am," Annie said. Eleanor's expression softened, not with pity, but with attention. "Then we will not pretend otherwise." Marlene came down the walkway from the door. "Mr. Harrington, I'm sure whatever happened last night can be cleared up. Annie has unfortunately created some confusion about the drawer, and..." William lifted one hand. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Stop." Marlene stopped. The parking lot heard it. William turned to Annie. "Did you use your own money last night?" "Yes, sir." "How much did you have?" Annie looked down. It still embarrassed her, even now. $5. "All of it?" "Yes, sir." "And after that?" "I had nothing left." Eleanor drew in a small breath. Derek looked at the pavement. William reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and took out a folded receipt. Annie recognized the thin paper from the register. This is the receipt for the gas she bought me, he said. $5 on pump 3. Paid here, last night. Derek tried to recover. Nobody said she didn't buy gas. The issue is the drawer was short. William looked at him. The drawer became short after she paid? That's what the count showed, Derek said. Annie turned toward him. After you sent me to the office. Derek's jaw tightened. I told you to answer the phone. Deadline, Annie said. William listened without interrupting. That alone changed the room. Annie was used to people waiting for her to finish so they could dismiss her. He seemed to be gathering every word. Marlene gave a controlled laugh. Mr. Harrington, with respect, this is an internal employee matter. Annie is young, emotional, and she has misunderstood store procedure. Eleanor's eyes sharpened. Do you often describe employees as emotional when they ask for evidence? Marlene looked at her, still smiling. Mrs. Harrington, I only mean, I know what you mean. That ended the sentence. The man in the navy suit stepped forward and handed William a slim folder. William opened it but did not look down yet. Miss Carter, he said. My wife and I came back this morning to repay a debt. We did not expect to find you leaving with your pay docked and your name questioned. Ray shifted near the doorway. She didn't take it. Everyone turned. Ray's face flushed, but he kept going. I didn't say enough yesterday. That's on me. But she used her own money. I saw her take it out of her jacket. Derek snapped. Ray. Ray looked at him. No, I'm done carrying your mess. Marlene's voice went cold. Raymond, you should be careful. I am being careful, Ray said. For once. Deputy Voss cleared his throat. Marlene, maybe we should just view the footage and settle it. Marlene turned on him. This is private property. William finally looked down at the folder, then back up. Mrs. Miller. My attorney is in the sedan behind me. I also have a technician who can preserve video from most commercial systems without altering your records. You may refuse, of course, but if you do, I will have my attorney file a preservation notice within the hour, and I will personally fund Miss Carter's complaint with the State Labor Office. Marlene's face stiffened. That sounds like a threat. No, William said. A threat depends on fear. This depends on paperwork. Annie looked at him then, really looked. The man who had stood beside her asking for gas had become someone else, or maybe he had always been this, and nobody had been able to see it under an old jacket and a bad story. Derek saw the same thing. His voice changed. Sir, last night I thought, you thought I was beneath you, William said. Derek swallowed. And you thought she was powerless. No one answered. Eleanor stepped closer to Annie. My husband told me what you said when you gave him that money. That he needed to get home, and you still had your bike. Annie's cheeks warmed. It wasn't much. With people who have plenty, $5 is change, Eleanor said. With someone who only has $5, it is courage. The words went through Annie slowly. She did not know what to do with them. She was used to being corrected, warned, watched, accused. She was not used to being named rightly. William took out a thick envelope from his inner pocket. It was not the slim payroll envelope Marlene had tried to hand Annie. This one was heavy, cream-colored, and sealed. I came back to repay what I owe, he said. Derek stared at the envelope. William held it toward Annie, but not in a way that forced her to take it. First, your $5. Annie looked at the envelope, confused. And second, William continued, an apology for what happened in this place while I was standing here. Not from them. From me. Because last night I had the power to leave. Once you helped me, you did not. Annie did not take the envelope. Sir, I didn't do it for money. I know. Then why? Because repayment is not the same as buying kindness. Marlene made a small sound. This is becoming theatrical. William did not look at her. No, Mrs. Miller. Last night was theatrical. A man asking for gas became entertainment. A young woman being kind became something to mock. This morning is accounting. The words seemed to settle over the pumps, the windows, the register, the envelope in Marlene's hand. Accounting, not revenge, not charity, a balancing. William turned to Deputy Voss. Deputy, I assume no one here will interfere while Miss Carter retrieves any personal belongings, and while my attorney speaks with Mrs. Miller regarding the video. Voss looked from William to Marlene. For the first time since Annie had known him, He did not seem eager to stand beside the Millers. "No one's interfering," he said. Derek muttered, "This is insane." Annie heard him, but she was watching William. "Who are you?" she asked. He paused, and for the first time that morning, something like humility crossed his face. "My name is William Harrington. I own Harrington Development Group." Annie had heard that name on the radio, usually in stories about warehouses, shopping centers, highway projects, and donations big enough for mayors to smile beside giant checks. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her backpack. "You're that Harrington?" "I'm afraid so," Ray whispered. "Good Lord." Eleanor almost smiled. "He gets that more often than he admits." Annie looked toward pump 3. Yesterday, he had stood there with no wallet, no phone, and nobody willing to believe him. Today, his name alone had changed the way everyone breathed. William followed her gaze. "I learned something last night," he said quietly. "Being dismissed is different when you know you can walk back in tomorrow and be recognized." Annie looked at him. He continued, "You did not have that luxury. That is why I am here." For a moment, the station was silent except for the traffic passing on the highway. Then Marlene stepped back and opened the door. "Fine," she said. "If everyone insists on making a production out of this, we can check the system." Derek's head snapped toward her. "Mom," William noticed. So did Annie. Eleanor's voice stayed calm. "That reaction suggests we should begin there." Annie stood beside her bike, the morning sun warming the pavement around her shoes, and felt the world shift by one careful inch. She was still hungry, still suspended, still short on rent, but she was no longer standing alone with only her word in her hands. William Harrington looked at the store entrance, then back at Annie. "Shall we?" he asked. Annie took a breath, lifted her chin the way Grandma Rose had taught her, and walked back into Miller's Gas and Mart. The bell over the door sounded different when Annie walked back in. It was the same thin metal jingle she had heard 1,000 times, but this time she was not entering as the girl who needed permission to stand behind the counter. She walked in beside William Harrington and Eleanor, with Ray behind her and Deputy Voss trailing last, and the whole store seemed to shrink around the truth it had tried to keep small. Marlene went straight to the counter and picked up her keys. Her hand was steady, but Annie noticed she chose the wrong key twice before finding the one for the back office. Derek stayed near the register. "This is a waste of time." William looked at him. "Then it should be painless." Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. The attorney from the sedan entered without a hurry. He was a slim man in his 40s with a leather folder under one arm and glasses low on his nose. Behind him came a younger man carrying a compact equipment case. William turned slightly. "This is Mr. Bell, my attorney. And that is Marcus Reed, our systems technician. They will not touch anything without permission or legal authority." Marlene gave a tight smile. "How considerate. It usually saves time," Mr. Bell said. Annie stood near the end of the counter, hands locked around the strap of her backpack. Eleanor noticed but did not tell her to relax. Annie appreciated that. People loved telling worried folks to relax, as if worry were a jacket you could remove and hang by the door. Ray stopped beside the coffee station. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the cups. Deputy Voss cleared his throat. "Marlene, let's just pull up the recording and be done with it." Marlene did not look at him. "I said I would check." She unlocked the office door and stepped in. Derek followed too quickly. William's voice stopped him. "Mr. Miller, Derek Froze, I believe your mother can manage the door. This is my store too. Then you will understand why everyone needs confidence that nothing is being altered." Derek's face flushed. "You calling me a liar?" "No, I'm preventing you from having the opportunity to become one in front of a deputy." Ray coughed once into his fist. It might have been a laugh, but he hid it fast. Marlene turned from inside the office. "Derek, stay out there." That hurt him. Annie saw it. Not enough to feel sorry for him, but enough to understand that Derek had spent years being protected by that voice. And now it had stepped away. The office was too small for everyone, so Marlene, William, Mr. Bell, Marcus, and Deputy Voss went inside. Eleanor stayed just outside the doorway with Annie. "You don't have to stand so stiff," Eleanor said softly. "I don't know how else to stand right now." "That is fair." Annie glanced at her. "Do you always talk like that?" "Like what?" "Like you don't need to fill every empty space." Eleanor smiled a little. "My mother used to say silence is where people show you who raised them. My grandmother would like that." I suspect I would like your grandmother. Before Annie could answer, Marlene's voice came from the office. The system is slow, Marcus answered. That model usually is, ma'am. I know my own system. I'm sure you do. The monitor inside gave a small beep. Derek shifted near the register. Annie saw his fingers tapping against his thigh. Tap, 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 fast and uneven. Ray saw it too. Derek, Ray said quietly. What? You got something you want to say before that screen says it? Derek glared at him. You grew a spine for strangers, Ray? Ray's face tightened. No, I misplaced it yesterday and found it this morning. Derek took one step toward him. Deputy Voss appeared in the office doorway. Enough. Derek stopped again. Inside the office, Marcus said, We have cameras 1, 2, 3, and register overhead. What time frame? William looked at Annie through the doorway. What time did I come in? Annie swallowed. A little after 9:30, maybe 9:40. Derek said, Convenient how she remembers now. Annie turned toward him. You laughed loud enough to make it memorable. Eleanor's mouth twitched, but she said nothing. Marcus clicked keys. The monitor glow lit the office wall. Annie could not see the screen from where she stood, but she could hear the change in the room. People breathed differently when evidence appeared. There, William said. That is me entering. Marlene said. Nobody denied you came in. Marcus advanced the footage. The low hum of the store filled the silence around them. Annie stared at Derek, not because she wanted to, but because she could not look away from the face of a man listening for his own lie to catch up with him. William's voice came from the office. Pause. No one spoke. Then Deputy Voss said, That looks like she took money from her jacket. Marcus answered, Yes, sir, I can zoom. Marlene said quickly, That does not prove the drawer later matched. No, William said. But it proves she paid with her own money. Annie closed her eyes for half a second. That one sentence did not fix everything. It did not pay rent. It did not erase the messages already sent around town. It did not put food in her stomach from the night before, but it lifted a weight off her name, and for a moment, she could breathe under it. Ray whispered, I'm sorry. Annie did not look at him. Not yet. The footage continued. Marcus said, Now she is counting down the drawer. Derek's tapping stopped. Annie heard paper moving, keys clicking, the soft whir of old playback. Then Marcus spoke again. She leaves toward the office. Marlene said. She was answering the phone. Annie said from the doorway, The dead phone. Nobody corrected her. Marcus continued. Mr. Miller approaches the drawer. Derek snapped. I was recounting. William's voice stayed even. The drawer was open? I'm shift manager. I can open the drawer. Marcus said. He removed something. Marlene stepped closer to the monitor. That angle is poor. It is good enough, Deputy Voss said. Everyone heard the shift in his tone. It was small, but there. The deputy was no longer managing Annie. He was watching Derek. Derek pointed toward the office. That doesn't show what you think it shows. Mr. Bell finally spoke. Then let us continue. The footage continued. Marcus said. Mr. Miller puts folded bills into his left pocket. I borrowed it, Derek said. The words came out too fast. Marlene turned toward him. Derek. He realized what he had said and tried to recover. I mean, I was making change. I was going to put it back. Annie looked at him. You let your mother say I did it. Derek's face twisted. It was $5. The room went cold. Eleanor stepped forward then. Her voice was calm, but Annie felt the cut in it. To you, Derek looked at her. To you, it was $5, Eleanor said. To her, it was her dinner. To your mother, it became a reason to take her wages. To this store, it became a lie. Small amounts are where dishonest people practice. William looked at Marlene. I believe Miss Carter is owed an apology and her full pay. Marlene's cheeks had gone pale beneath her makeup. This is a personnel matter. William shook his head once. It was a personnel matter when you had the truth and chose not to check it. Now it is a public matter because you allowed a false accusation to stand. Deputy Voss looked at Derek. Did you take the $5? Derek looked at his mother. Marlene did not save him quickly enough. I was going to put it back, he said again, weaker this time. Ray muttered, Lord. Annie felt no triumph. That surprised her. She had imagined, somewhere in the tired corners of her mind, that proof would feel like winning. Instead, It felt like standing in a room where everyone could finally see the bruise, and the bruise still hurt. Marlene walked to the register, took the payroll envelope she had prepared, and added a $5 bill from the drawer, then another stack of bills. Her fingers were stiff. "Here," she said. Annie did not take it. Marlene's eyes lifted. "Now what?" Annie looked at the envelope. "Is that all the time you cut from my check too?" Marlene went still. Ray looked at Annie. Derek stopped breathing for a beat. William turned to her. "What time?" Annie reached into her backpack and pulled out the notebook pages. 3 minutes here. 7 there. 15 when the closing truck came late. She rounds down when I stay late. And rounds up when I'm late. Marlene said, "That is absurd." Ray spoke before Annie could. "She does it." Marlene turned on him. "Raymond." He lifted both hands, tired now, but not backing up. "You do." Deputy Voss rubbed his forehead. "Marlene." Mr. Bell opened his folder. "Mrs. Miller, I suggest you preserve payroll records immediately." Marlene gave him a hard look. "You do not represent my business." "No," he said. "I represent a man who appears to have witnessed retaliation against a young employee after she assisted him. By this afternoon, I may also represent Miss Carter, if she wants counsel." Annie looked at him, startled. William turned to her. "Only if you choose." The choice mattered. He said it like it mattered. That was another thing Annie was not used to. Derek grabbed his keys from the counter. "I'm not standing here for this." Deputy Voss stepped into his path. "Stay. For what? $5? Voss looked at him. "For theft from your employer's drawer and a false statement that caused an employee's wages to be withheld." Derek laughed once, but it cracked halfway through. "You serious?" "For once," Annie said quietly. "Somebody is." He looked at her with pure dislike. But beneath it was fear, and that fear told Annie the world had moved another inch. William walked to the counter and placed the heavy cream envelope in front of Annie again. "This is not to settle anything with them. That is separate. This is between you and me." Annie stared at it. "I told you," she said. "I didn't do it for money." "I know. So I will not insult you by calling it a reward." He opened the envelope and removed a single, crisp, $5 bill. He placed it on the counter. "This is repayment." Then he set the rest of the envelope beside it. "And this is a conversation, if you are willing to have one. My wife and I would like to speak with you about school, work, and what you want your life to look like beyond this counter." Annie could not answer. Behind her, the store that had made her feel small was silent. The coffee burned in the pot. The pumps clicked outside. The morning customers stared and pretended not to. Eleanor came beside her. "You do not have to decide anything here." Annie looked down at the $5 bill. Not coins this time. Not a tired folded dollar. Clean. Flat. Almost too bright under the lights. "What if I say no?" Annie asked. William nodded. "Then you say no. And I still owe you respect." That did it. Not the money. Not the SUV. Not the name Harrington. The respect. Annie picked up the $5 bill, folded it once, and held it in her palm. "I'll talk," she said. William gave a small nod. "That is all I ask." Marlene stood behind the counter with the payroll envelope in her hand, looking older than she had that morning. Derek stood near the door with Deputy Voss in front of him. Ray watched Annie like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. Annie looked toward the camera dome above the register. All night, she had wondered whether the truth was still there. It had been. Not loud, not kind, not fast, but it had been waiting. The silence after the video felt heavier than the accusation had. Annie stood near the counter with the $5 bill folded in her hand. She had imagined proof would make people speak. She had imagined Derek would apologize, Marlene would look ashamed, Ray would say what he should have said sooner, and Deputy Voss would write something official on a clean piece of paper. Instead, everyone seemed to be waiting for someone else to decide what truth required. William Harrington did not wait. "Mr. Bell," he said, "please make a note of the time, the camera angle, and the statements made in this room." His attorney wrote without looking up. "Already doing so." Marlene's face tightened. "You have no authority to conduct an investigation in my store." "No," William said, "but I do have authority over what I witnessed. Last night I watched your employees humiliate a customer asking for help. This morning I watched them attempt to discredit the young woman who helped him. Now we have video showing your son took money from the drawer and let her be blamed." Derek's voice rose. "It was $5. Annie looked at him then. You keep saying that like it makes you better. He turned toward her. Don't act like you're above everybody because some rich guy showed up. Eleanor stepped slightly in front of Annie, not shielding her like she was weak, but placing herself where disrespect would have to pass through her first. Careful. Derek gave a bitter laugh. What? Now everybody's scared to talk. Deputy Voss moved closer. Derek, sit down. I don't work for you. No, but you're about 10 seconds from giving me a reason to stop asking. That quieted him, though not gently. He dropped onto a stool near the lottery machine, jaw working, eyes hard. Ray stood with both hands on the coffee counter. Marlene, you need to make this right. Marlene turned on him. You are still my employee. Ray nodded. That's why I know she ain't the first. The words cut through the store. Marlene went still. Derek looked up sharply. Annie felt her fingers close tighter around the $5 bill. William turned to Ray. Explain. Ray swallowed. I'm not saying I got records. Say what you know, Eleanor said. Ray looked at Annie first, as if asking permission. She gave no answer. She was done giving people courage they should have brought themselves. He breathed out. I've worked here 6 years. Drawers come up short when Derek closes. Somehow it's always the cashier who gets blamed. Usually somebody who can't afford to fight. Keisha, Denise, that boy Luis who pumped gas before me, couple others. Marlene snapped. That is gossip. No, Ray said. Gossip is what Derek spread about Annie before breakfast. This is what I saw. Deputy Voss looked uncomfortable now. Ray, you're making some serious claims. Ray faced him. Then maybe somebody serious should have listened before. Voss did not answer. Annie thought of Keisha's message. Denise's story. Luis and the sticky notes that vanished. She took the spiral pages from her backpack and placed them on the counter. I wrote down the names that contacted me, she said. Keisha, Denise, Luis, Mr. Dawson, Ray, and my own timeline. Mr. Bell stepped closer but did not touch the pages. May I? Annie nodded. He read quickly, eyes moving behind his glasses. This is useful. Marlene gave a sharp little laugh. A handwritten list from a disgruntled employee is useful? It is useful because it tells us whom to ask first, Mr. Bell said. William looked at Annie. Did any of them say they would speak? Maybe. They're scared. Of losing wages? Of losing work? Of being called liars? Of being treated like trouble? Annie glanced at Marlene. People around here remember trouble longer than they remember truth. Eleanor's face softened. That is a hard thing to learn, so young. I learned it early. Marlene reached for the payroll envelope again. Annie, take your money. Full amount. We will consider this closed. Annie looked at the envelope but did not move. Marlene pushed it closer. You have been paid. The matter is corrected. No? Annie said. It's corrected for the $5. Marlene's eyes narrowed. What else do you want? The question was a trap. Annie felt it. So did William. Because he turned his head slightly toward her but did not speak for her, Annie looked around the store. At the counter where she had been watched. At the camera that had saved her only because someone powerful had demanded it. At Ray, guilty and late. At Derek, angry because the world had not protected him quickly enough. At Marlene, already trying to fold the truth into an envelope and hand it away. I want my name cleared, Annie said. Not just in here. Derek told people I stole. Derek scoffed. I didn't say it like that. The bell over the door rang before anyone could answer. A woman in a blue nursing uniform stepped inside, then stopped when she saw the crowd. Her eyes moved from Annie to Derek to Marlene. Annie recognized her from an old photo Keisha had once shown on her phone. Denise? Annie asked. The woman held up her phone. Keisha texted me. Said the girl from Miller's finally had somebody checking the cameras. Marlene's face hardened. This is private property. Denise did not move. It was private property when you took $86 from my final check too. Derek stood. Oh, come on. Deputy Voss pointed at him. Sit. Denise looked at Annie. You all right? Annie hesitated. Getting there. Denise nodded, as if that was the most honest answer she had heard all morning. They told me my drawer was short 3 times. First time, I thought I miscounted. Second time, I cried in my car. Third time, I quit before they could fire me. Later, Louise told me Derek used to take cash and say he'd fix it before closing. Marlene spoke through her teeth. You cannot prove that. No, Denise said. That's why I left. But if the cameras go back far enough, maybe somebody can. Marcus, the technician, looked toward William. Depends on the retention. Some systems hold 30 days, some 90 if configured. Derek's face changed. Annie saw it. So did Eleanor. William turned slowly toward Derek. How long does this system retain footage? Derek said nothing. Marlene answered. I don't know technical details. Marcus looked at the monitor inside the office. I can tell you in about 2 minutes. Derek moved toward the office. Voss caught his arm. Don't. Derek pulled back. Get your hand off me. Then stop walking toward the evidence. The word evidence changed everything. It made the station feel less like a family business and more like a room where consequences had found the door. Marlene's voice rose for the first time. Deputy, are you taking their side? Voss looked at William, then at Annie, then at Derek. I'm taking the side of not looking stupid when this ends up above my head. It was not noble. Annie knew that. But sometimes the first step toward justice was a man realizing the lie had become too expensive to stand beside. Marcus leaned into the office and clicked through the system. 90-day retention. 4 cameras. Register overhead. Pump area. Loading door. Office hallway. Mr. Bell closed his folder halfway. Mrs. Miller, I am advising you now, in front of Deputy Voss, to preserve all footage and payroll records for the last 90 days. I don't take advice from you. You may prefer the subpoena. Marlene looked like she wanted to tear the word out of the air. William's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then answered, Yes. He listened for a moment. Bring them in, but keep it respectful. Annie looked at Eleanor. Who? My husband made a few calls this morning, Eleanor said. Before Annie could ask more, 2 more vehicles pulled in outside. One carried a local news logo on the side. The other was a plain state sedan. Marlene saw them through the window. You called reporters? William looked at her. No. I called the labor office. The reporter called me after someone here began spreading Miss Carter's name around town. Derek looked at Annie. You did this? Annie shook her head. No. You started it when you lied. The door opened again. A woman with a notebook stepped in first, followed by a man carrying a small camera. Behind them came a state labor investigator in a gray blazer. The reporter paused, taking in the room. Mr. Harrington? William nodded once. Miss Brennan. Annie felt the floor tilt. This was no longer a private fight over a drawer. The lie had left the building, and now the truth was following it into daylight. The labor investigator approached Marlene. Mrs. Miller. I'm Angela Reed with the Georgia Department of Labor. We received a complaint regarding wage deductions and possible retaliation. Marlene stared at Annie with a look that would have scared her yesterday. Today, Annie still felt fear. But it did not own the room. Angela Reed turned to her. Are you Annie Carter? Yes, ma'am. Would you be willing to make a statement? Annie looked at William. He gave no instruction. Eleanor gave no push. Grandma Rose was not there to tell her what to do. But Annie heard her anyway. Fight for your name first. Annie placed the folded $5 bill into her backpack, stood straight, and nodded. Yes, ma'am, she said. I would. Angela Reed did not raise her voice. That made people listen harder. She stood just inside Miller's Gas and Mart, with a leather notebook in one hand and an ID badge clipped to her blazer. She was not tall, not loud, not dressed to impress anyone. But she had the calm manner of a woman who had walked into plenty of rooms where people thought local habits were stronger than state law. Mrs. Miller, she said, I'm going to ask that no one touch the register, payroll files, camera system, or employee records until I've documented what is present. Marlene's smile returned, thin and polished. Miss Reed, I'm sure there's been some confusion. We run a small family business here. Sometimes young employees misunderstand routine deductions. Angela looked at her. That may be. That's why I'm here. Derek muttered, over $5. Angela turned toward him. Sir, your name? Derek straightened as if the question itself offended him. Derek Miller. I manage the shift. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Please don't minimize the subject while I'm gathering statements. His mouth shut. Annie stood near the counter, feeling the eyes in the room shift between her and the camera crew. The reporter, Linda Brennan, had not turned the camera on yet. She watched like someone who knew silence could be more useful than interruption. The cameraman waited by the drink cooler, lens pointed down. Angela stepped closer to Annie. Miss Carter, I'll start with you. Tell me what happened in order. Don't guess. Don't add what you think people meant. Just what you saw, heard, and did. That helped. Annie could do order. Order was safer than emotion. She told it from the moment William walked in the night before. The SUV. The $5 request. Ray warning her not to trust him. Her phone message from Grandma Rose. The money from her jacket pocket. Pump 3. Derek warning her about the drawer. The end of shift count. The dead office call. Returning to find the drawer short. Refusing to sign the form. Coming back the next morning. Being suspended. Asking again for the camera. Her voice stayed steadier than she expected. Once or twice, it thinned, but it did not break. Angela wrote as she spoke. You stated that before you left to answer the office phone, the drawer balanced? Yes, ma'am. Who was present? Derek. Ray was near the doorway. Angela looked at Ray. Mr. Collins? Ray swallowed. I was there. I saw her counting. I didn't see the final total, but I saw Derek send her to the back. Did the phone ring? Ray hesitated. I heard it ring once. Annie turned. You heard it? I thought I did. Angela wrote. And after Miss Carter left? Ray looked at Derek. Derek's stare was hard enough to bruise. Angela did not look up. Mr. Collins, answer me. Not him. Ray exhaled. Derek was at the drawer. Derek snapped. Because I'm the manager. Angela lifted one finger. You'll have your turn. The store went quiet again. William stood beside Eleanor near the window, hands at his sides. He had not tried to lead the questioning. That restraint mattered. Annie had seen men with money enter rooms and fill them until nobody else could breathe. William did not do that. He had opened the door, then let the facts walk in. Angela turned to Marcus. You recovered video? Marcus nodded. Yes, ma'am. The register camera shows Miss Carter paying from her own pocket. Later it shows Mr. Miller accessing the drawer and placing folded bills into his left pocket. Derek stood. I was going to put it back. Angela looked at him. So you did remove money? His face flushed, temporarily. Was that recorded in the cash log? Marlene answered before he could. There are informal cash practices in small businesses. Angela looked at her. That was not my question. Derek sat back down. No, he said. Angela wrote one word. Annie could not see it, but she felt it. No, such a small word, smaller than $5, stronger than all of Derek's laughing. Linda Brennan finally spoke. Miss Reed, are we allowed to record exterior footage? Angela did not turn. Not inside while I'm conducting interviews unless all parties consent. Outside is public, but do not interfere. Linda nodded. Understood. Marlene's eyes narrowed. This is outrageous. William said. No, outrageous was last night. This is procedure. Marlene looked at him as if she hated that he could make a simple sentence sound final. Angela asked for the payroll records. Marlene delayed. First, she said the files were not current. Then she said the computer was slow. Then she said her bookkeeper handled deductions. Angela listened to each answer and wrote it down, which made the excuses look worse than if she had argued with them. Mr. Bell stood near the office door. Mrs. Miller, delay will also be documented. Marlene shot him a glare, then unlocked a filing cabinet. Annie watched the drawer open. Manila folders stood in uneven rows, some marked with names she recognized. Keisha, Denise Walker, Luis Ramirez, her own name, Carter, Annie, written in black marker on a tab already smudged from use. Seeing her name in that drawer made her feel strange, as if part of her life had been stored in a place where people could bend it when she was not looking. Angela took photographs of the file labels with her phone. I'll need copies, Marlene said. You can request them formally. Angela looked at her. I am requesting them formally. The attorney from Harrington's team gave the smallest smile. Derek rubbed both hands over his face. Mom, just give them the damn copies. Marlene turned on him. Be quiet. That was when Denise stepped forward again. She had been standing near the door in her blue nursing uniform, holding her purse tight against her ribs. My name's Denise Walker, she said. I worked here 11 months. They took money from my last check. Angela turned to her. Are you willing to provide a statement? Denise looked at Annie first. Then she nodded. Yes. The word seemed to open something. Mr. Dawson came back in from his truck and said he would confirm what he had heard about the cameras. Ray said he would state that Derek accessed the camera cabinet after Annie left. A man from the coffee station admitted he had heard Derek tell a customer Annie got caught stealing, though Derek had no proof. Each statement was not enough alone. Together, they began to form a road. Annie stood beside the counter and felt the room move around her. People who had watched were now remembering. People who had stayed quiet were now deciding how much silence might cost them. It was not pure courage. Some of it was fear of William. Some of it was fear of the state investigator. Some of it was fear of being on the wrong side when the story left town. Annie knew that, but truth did not always arrive carried by saints. Sometimes it came in the hands of people who were late, nervous, and ashamed. Angela asked to see the camera footage herself. Marcus played it again on the office monitor. This time Annie did not step closer. She did not need to watch her own humiliation become evidence twice. She watched Marlene instead. Marlene's face remained composed until the moment Derek took the folded bills. Then her eyes closed for half a second. Not shock, Annie thought. Calculation. When the video ended, Angela said, "I'm preserving this footage as relevant to a wage deduction and retaliation complaint. Mr. Miller, I will also be noting your admission that you removed drawer funds without logging them." Derek's voice was low. "Am I being arrested?" Deputy Voss shifted. He had been hoping no one would ask that. Angela looked at him. "Deputy?" Voss cleared his throat. "That depends on whether Mrs. Miller wants to file a theft complaint." Marlene's head snapped up. "Against my own son?" William's voice cut in, quiet but sharp. "You were willing to let Miss Carter carry that word." No one spoke. Annie felt the sentence land in her chest. You were willing to let Miss Carter carry that word. That was the thing. Not the $5. Not even the hunger. The word thief had been placed near her name as casually as a receipt on a counter. If William had not come back, if the camera had been erased, if Ray and Dawson had stayed quiet, that word could have followed her from job to job in a town small enough to remember gossip longer than proof. Marlene looked away first. Deputy Voss took out his notebook. "Derek, I'm going to need a written statement." Derek laughed once, bitter and scared. "Now you're a cop?" Voss's face hardened. "Don't make me regret not starting there." Angela handed Annie a card. "Miss Carter, I'll be in touch. Keep your notes. Save every message. Do not delete anything." "Yes, ma'am. And do not discuss details with Mrs. Miller or Mr. Miller without someone present." Annie nodded. Marlene placed Annie's full paycheck on the counter. This time the envelope was thicker. "Here is the corrected amount." Angela looked at Annie. "You may accept payment without signing any release." Marlene stiffened. Annie picked up the envelope but did not open it. Her hand shook only a little. "Thank you," she said to Angela, not Marlene. Linda Brennan stepped closer, careful. "Miss Carter, would you be willing to answer a few questions outside?" "Nothing you don't want to answer." Annie looked at the camera, then at William and Eleanor. She did not want to become a story. Stories made people flatten you until you fit what they needed. Poor girl, kind girl, black girl, lucky girl, foolish girl, saved girl. Eleanor seemed to read the fear on her face. "You can say no," she said. Annie looked down at the paycheck envelope, then at the $5 bill folded in her other hand. Grandma Rose's voice rose in her mind. "Fight for your name first." She turned to Linda. "I'll answer one thing. Outside, the sun was bright enough to make her squint." The camera stayed low until Linda gave a nod. Annie stood near Pump 3, the same place William's SUV had sat empty the night before. Linda asked, "What do you want people to know?" Annie thought of many answers. That she was tired, that she was hungry, that she was not a thief, that $5 was not small when it was all you had, that nobody should have to be rescued by a billionaire to be believed. She said, "I want people to know I told the truth before anyone important got here." Linda lowered the microphone slightly. Annie continued, "And I want them to know the truth should have mattered then." No one spoke for a moment. Behind the glass, Derek sat with Deputy Voss standing over him. Marlene watched from the counter, her face unreadable. Ray stood near the coffee station, head bowed. Denise wiped her eyes with the back of one hand. William Harrington stood a few feet away, hands folded in front of him. When Annie looked at him, he gave a small nod. Not approval. Respect. That was better. Annie folded the $5 bill once more and slid it into her backpack beside her notebook. The bill was repaid. Her name was not fully repaired yet, but the work had started, and for the first time since she had placed her last $5 on the counter, Annie felt something other than hunger pulling at her. La question. What comes next? The question followed Annie all the way back inside. What comes next? It sat with her while Angela Reed sealed copies of the camera footage onto a state drive. It sat with her while Mr. Bell gave her a card and told her not to sign anything from Miller's without someone reading it first. It sat with her while Derek avoided her eyes, and Marlene spoke in clipped sentences to the labor investigator, as if grammar alone could save her. Annie had spent the last 2 days fighting to prove she had not stolen $5. Now the proof stood in the room, and everyone seemed to expect her to know what to do with it. She did not. All she knew was that her paycheck envelope felt too light for the damage done, even after Marlene corrected it. Denise came over first. She still wore her nursing uniform, the blue one with a small bleach mark near the pocket. "You did good," Denise said. Annie shook her head. "I didn't do much. You stayed. I almost didn't. But you did." Denise looked toward the counter, where Marlene was pretending not to listen. "I didn't. When they shorted my check, I cried in the car and never came back. Took me 6 months to stop thinking I should have fought." Annie did not know what to say to that. She had always thought adults had firmer ground under their feet. Lately, every adult she met seemed to be standing on something cracked. Denise touched her arm. "Don't let them make you feel bad because somebody with money helped. The truth was yours before he got here." That sentence went somewhere deep. Annie nodded. "Thank you." Near the coffee station, Ray had been quiet too long. He finally walked over, red rag folded in both hands like an offering. "Annie," he said. She looked at him but did not make it easy. "I'm sorry," he said. "Not the kind where I say it so you'll make me feel better. Just sorry. That's a start." He nodded. "Yeah, I know. You could have stopped it last night. I know. You could have stopped it this morning. I know that too." Annie waited. Ray looked older than he had yesterday. "I got used to keeping my head down. At first it felt like staying out of trouble. Then one day you wake up and realize staying out of trouble is how trouble keeps a job." Annie wanted to stay angry. A part of her needed it, but the sentence was too honest to throw away. "Are you going to talk to Miss Reed?" she asked. "Yes. Even if Marlene fires you?" Ray looked at the counter. "I think I already worked my last shift here." Marlene heard that. "You may be right." Ray turned. "Then mail my check. The full one." Derek let out a harsh laugh. "Now everybody's brave." Ray faced him. "No. Everybody's tired." Deputy Voss told Derek to stand. He was not handcuffed, but the deputy walked him to the office for a written statement. Derek moved like a man, insulted by consequences. As he passed Annie, he muttered, "Hope you enjoy your little show." William stepped closer, but Annie answered first. "It was your show," she said. "I just stopped playing the part you gave me." Derek looked at her then, really looked, and for a second she saw the thing under his anger. Not regret. Fear. He had never believed Annie could become the kind of person people listened to. Now that she had, he did not know where to put himself. Deputy Voss guided him into the office and shut the door. Marlene watched them go. For the first time, she seemed alone in her own store. Angela Reed approached Annie again. "Miss Carter, I have enough for the initial complaint. This may take time. Wage cases are not quick. I don't want to promise more than the process can deliver." "I understand." "Do you?" Annie looked at her. Angela's voice lowered. "People think proof fixes the feeling. It doesn't. Sometimes it only starts the paperwork." That almost made Annie smile. "My grandmother would like you. Smart woman?" "Very." "Then listen to her before you listen to strangers." Angela handed her another card. "Call me if anyone contacts you, threatens you, offers you money to stay quiet, or asks you to sign anything." Annie took it. "Yes, ma'am." Outside, Linda Brennan was still speaking with Denise near the news van. Mr. Dawson stood by his delivery truck, rubbing the back of his neck while Mr. Bell took down his statement. Cars continued to pull in for gas, but slowly now, drivers sensing that the station had become something other than a station for the morning. William stood near Pump 3 with Eleanor. They were speaking quietly. Annie wondered if he would leave now. He had repaid the $5. He had brought help. He had turned the room toward the truth. That was already more than she had expected from anyone. But when she stepped outside, he turned as if he had been waiting. "Miss Carter," he said, "do you have somewhere you need to be right now?" Annie almost laughed. "I was supposed to be at work." Eleanor's mouth softened. "Fair answer." William looked toward the station. "I would like to speak with you and your grandmother, if you're willing." "Not here. Not in front of cameras." Annie's guard rose at once. "About what?" "About the envelope I offered earlier. I told you I don't want a reward." "I heard you. Then why do we need to talk?" "Because I don't want to give you a reward. I want to ask what you wanted before life made you settle for survival." The words struck so cleanly that Annie looked away. Eleanor stepped in, gentle but direct. "Annie, no one is asking you to decide anything today. We would simply like to sit at a table with you and your grandmother. Your grandmother deserves to hear anything offered to you." That mattered. Too much. "My house isn't—" Annie stopped. Eleanor finished softly. "A showroom?" Annie glanced at her. "My first apartment had a stove that shocked me if I touched it barefoot," Eleanor said. "People with money love pretending they were born in finished rooms. Most of us were not." William looked at his wife with the kind of fondness that did not need an audience. Annie held the payroll envelope against her chest. "Grandma Rose doesn't like charity." "Neither do I," William said. "That's easy to say when you don't need it." He accepted that without flinching. "You're right." She expected him to explain himself, to defend wealth, to tell her he had struggled once. He did not. Instead, he said, "That is why I want your grandmother at the table." Annie looked toward her bike. The chain had been slipping for a week. The left pedal clicked. It suddenly looked very small beside the black SUV and the sedan behind it. "I can ride home," she said. Eleanor looked at the bike, then back at her. "You can, or we can follow behind you, so your grandmother does not see a strange car arrive first and worry herself sick." That was practical. Annie liked practical. "All right," she said. "But you park on the street." She doesn't like people blocking the walk. William gave a solemn nod. "On the street. And don't bring cameras." "No cameras. And don't talk to her like she's helpless." Eleanor smiled then. "I would not dare." Annie believed her. She put the payroll envelope and the folded $5 bill into her backpack, then unlocked her bike. As she rolled it toward the road, she looked once more at Miller's Gas and Mart. Marlene stood inside by the counter, watching through the glass. Ray was talking to Angela. Derek remained behind the office door with Deputy Voss. The station looked the same as it always had. Old pumps, cheap coffee, faded signs, hot food under lamps. But Annie no longer belonged to the lie inside it. She climbed onto the bike and began pedaling toward Briar Lane. Behind her, at a respectful distance, the black SUV pulled onto the road and followed. For the first time since the message about Grandma Rose's savings, Annie was not riding home with only bad news. She was riding home with witnesses, proof, and a question she was almost afraid to ask. What if survival was not the only thing left? The ride to Briar Lane took 12 minutes, but Annie felt every turn of the pedals. The Harrington SUV followed far enough behind that it did not look like an escort, close enough that she could hear it slow when she slowed. Neighbors looked up from porches and yards as the vehicles passed. Pine Hollow noticed things. A black SUV behind a girl on a bicycle was the kind of thing people would talk about before supper. Grandma Rose was already on the porch when Annie turned into the yard. She stood with one hand on the railing, robe replaced by a faded house dress, slippers still on her feet. Her eyes went first to Annie, checking face, shoulders, hands, the way only a grandmother could. Then she looked past her to the SUV and the sedan parked neatly along the curb. Annie leaned the bike against the porch. "I'm okay." Rose narrowed her eyes. "That is not the same as nothing happened." "No, Mom." William and Eleanor stepped out of the SUV. William did not come up the walk right away. He waited by the curb until Annie nodded. Eleanor carried no purse large enough to make a statement, no folder, no camera, nothing that made the visit look like business first. Grandma Rose lifted her chin. "Annie, who are these people?" Annie climbed the porch steps. "This is Mr. William Harrington, and his wife, Mrs. Eleanor Harrington." Rose looked at William for a long second. "Harrington as in those warehouses off Highway 16? "Yes, ma'am," William said from the walkway. "That Harrington. And you're the man with the SUV?" "I am." Rose's eyes moved over his suit, then back to his face. "You dress different today." William accepted that. "Yes, ma'am. Money will do that." "It can." Eleanor's mouth curved slightly. but she let William answer for himself. Rose turned to Annie. Did they help you at the station? Yes. Did they make it worse? Annie almost smiled. A little of both. That sounds about right. Rose opened the screen door. Come in then. If we're going to talk, we talk sitting down. I don't do porch business with strangers. William waited until Rose entered first. Eleanor followed Annie into the small living room, where the couch had a blanket tucked over one worn arm and family photos lined a shelf near the television. William paused just inside, not with judgment, but with care, as if entering someone's home required leaving size at the door. Rose noticed. You can sit, Mr. Harrington. Chair won't bite unless you owe it money. William sat in the wooden chair near the window. Thank you. Eleanor took the end of the couch. Annie sat beside Grandma Rose, close enough that their knees nearly touched. For a moment, no one spoke. The box fan hummed in the hallway. Somewhere outside, Mrs. Bell's dog barked twice and gave up. Rose looked at Annie. Start with the truth. So Annie told her. She kept it plain. The state investigator. The video. Derek taking the money. Ray finally speaking. Denise coming in. The labor complaint. Marlene correcting the paycheck. William offering to talk about school and work. Rose listened without blinking. When Annie finished, the old woman held out her hand. Annie gave her the payroll envelope. Rose opened it, counted once, then tucked the money back inside. Full. Yes, ma'am. And your name? Annie swallowed. Better than it was this morning. Rose looked at William. Did you come here because you feel guilty? William folded his hands. Partly. Eleanor glanced at him, but he continued. I was able to leave last night because Annie helped me. She had to stay there after I drove away. That has sat badly with me. It should, Rose said. Yes, ma'am, it does. Rose leaned back. Good. Guilt is only useful if it makes a person behave better. Otherwise, it's just noise. William nodded. I agree. Annie looked from one to the other. She had never seen anyone with William's kind of money take correction from an old woman in a house like theirs and not rush to cover it with pride. Rose said, Now tell me what you want from my granddaughter. Eleanor answered this time. Nothing from her, something for her, if she wants it. Rose's eyes moved to her. There's always a from. Eleanor accepted that too. Then honesty. We want honesty from her. We want to know what kind of life she was trying to build before bills and sickness narrowed the road. Annie looked down. Rose did not. And after you know? William reached into his jacket and took out the cream envelope. He placed it on the coffee table, then slid it no farther. Inside is not cash. It's information. A paid part-time position at Harrington Logistics. Entry-level office support, training included. Flexible hours around community college. Tuition assistance, if Annie enrolls. Health benefits, after the probation period. Legal support for the complaint against Millers, should she choose it. Rose did not touch the envelope. Choose. That word matters. It does, William said. She can refuse every part of it. I will still preserve the evidence from Millers, and I will still cooperate with the labor office. Annie lifted her eyes. Why? William looked at her. Because the truth should not depend on whether you accept my help. Rose gave the smallest nod. That's the first thing you've said that I like without needing to turn it over. Eleanor smiled. He improves with pressure. William glanced at his wife. So I'm told. The small humor eased the room, but only a little. Annie's heart was still beating too fast. I don't know how to work in an office, she said. That is why it includes training, Eleanor said. I don't own office clothes. You do not need to arrive as someone else. I don't have a car. We can arrange a bus pass or a ride program until you decide what works. Annie shook her head. That sounds like charity. William leaned forward slightly. Charity is giving someone a fish and asking them to smile for the picture. Opportunity is giving someone a place to work, a standard to meet, and wages they earn. I am offering the second. Rose looked at Annie. What did you want to study? Annie felt exposed by the question. I don't know anymore. You knew once. Medical billing, maybe nursing assistant, maybe business. I kept changing it because every time I picked something, it started costing money in my head. Rose looked at William. Can your company use a girl who understands what $5 means? Yes, ma'am, William said. More than we can use another person who thinks money is only numbers. Annie's throat tightened. Rose reached for the envelope then. She opened it and read every page slowly. Eleanor did not rush her. William did not explain what had not been asked. Annie watched her grandmother's finger move under each line. Finally, Rose set the pages on her lap. The pay is real? Yes, ma'am. Not a little show job where people pat her on the head? No. She reports to somebody who knows how to speak respectfully? Yes. And if she makes a mistake, she will be corrected, not humiliated. Rose held his gaze. Those are different things. I know. Do you? William paused. I learned it again yesterday. That answer seemed to satisfy her more than a polished one would have. Rose turned to Annie. Baby, look at me. Annie did. If this were a pile of money for your kindness, I'd tell you to hand it back. Kindness is not for sale, but this here looks like work. It looks like school. It looks like a door. I'm scared. Good. Doors are scary when you've been living in hallways. Eleanor looked away for a second, blinking. Annie touched the edge of the envelope. What if I fail? Rose answered before anyone else could. Then you fail at something bigger than surviving. That's still a step up. The room went quiet. William said softly, Miss Carter, I cannot promise an easy road. I can promise it will be honest. Annie looked at him. And the people from Miller's? The law will handle what the law can handle, he said. The rest may take longer. Rose gave a dry little sound. Justice is never as fast as gossip. No, ma'am, William said, but it travels farther when people carry it properly. Annie sat with that. She thought of the counter at Miller's, the $5 bill, the black dome camera, Derek's face when the truth came on screen. She thought of the community college email waiting on her phone. She thought of Grandma Rose's medicine bottles and the rent due in 9 days. Then she picked up the envelope. I'll try, she said. Rose touched her wrist. No, baby. Trying is what you say when you expect the door to close. Annie breathed in. I'll do it, she said. William nodded once. Eleanor smiled, not wide, but with warmth that did not ask to be thanked. Rose pointed at William. One more thing. Yes, ma'am? If she works for you, you don't own her story. William's face grew serious. No, ma'am, she does. And if reporters come around, only if Annie agrees. Rose looked at Annie. You hear that? I hear it. Outside. A car slowed in front of the house, then moved on. Pine Hollow was still watching. Let it watch, Annie thought. For once, there was nothing to hide. Eleanor stood. May I say something before we go? Rose lifted a hand. If it's short, Eleanor laughed softly. Fair. She looked at Annie. Last night, you helped my husband get home. Today, let us help you get somewhere too. Annie held the envelope close. For the first time in days, the future did not look like a bill waiting on the table. It looked like a road she had never taken, and though she was still afraid, she could finally see where it began. 3 months later, Annie still woke before the alarm. For most of her life, waking early had meant worry. Check Grandma Rose's medicine, count the money in the coffee can. Make sure the bicycle tire still held air. Think about bills before the sun had the decency to come up. But that Monday morning, the alarm had not rung yet, and Annie was already sitting on the edge of her bed with a pair of black flats on the floor and the cream envelope open beside her. The offer had become real slowly. First came paperwork. Then a phone call from Harrington Logistics. Then a bus pass in her name, not handed to her like pity, but issued through the Employee Transportation Program. Then an email from the community college confirming her part-time enrollment, medical billing and office administration. 2 evening classes, 1 online course, and a stack of books that looked too heavy for someone still learning how to believe she belonged. Grandma Rose knocked once and pushed the bedroom door open with her hip. You dressed? Almost. You've been almost for 20 minutes. Annie looked down at her blouse. It was white, thrift store clean, ironed twice the night before. Does this look too much? For an office? No. For me? Rose's face changed. She stepped inside and sat carefully on the edge of the bed. Baby, don't start making yourself smaller before the world even gets a chance to try. Annie looked at the shoes. I don't know what people wear in places like that. They wear clothes, they spill coffee, they forget names, they act important near copy machines. You'll learn. That made Annie laugh, which helped. Rose reached for the small framed $5 bill on the crate beside Annie's bed. William had given her a new $5 that day, but Annie had not spent it. She had folded it once, unfolded it, and finally placed it behind the glass of an old picture frame that used to hold a school photo. Under it, on a strip of paper, she had written, "It was all I had, and I still had a choice." Rose held the frame for a moment. "You taking this?" "No, it stays here." "Good. Don't carry every reminder with you. Some need to wait at home." In the kitchen, breakfast was toast, scrambled eggs, and coffee strong enough to count as a decision. That was new, too. Real coffee. A fresh can bought with Annie's first corrected paycheck and a small grocery card Eleanor had insisted was part of a temporary employee household support program. Rose had questioned it for 10 straight minutes until Eleanor produced a printed policy showing other workers had used it too. Only then had Rose nodded and said, "Fine, if everybody's dignity gets the same paperwork." The bus stop was 6 blocks away. Annie could have ridden her bike, but Grandma Rose insisted on walking with her to the corner. They moved slowly, Rose's cane tapping against the sidewalk, Annie matching her pace even though nerves pushed her to hurry. Mrs. Bell was watering her marigolds. "First day?" Annie stopped. "Yes, ma'am. You look nice." "Thank you." Mrs. Bell leaned on the hose. "And Annie?" "Yes, ma'am." "Don't let them folks talk so fast you forget you're smart." Rose pointed her cane at her. "See? That's why I like old women. We don't waste words." The bus came 3 minutes late. Annie hugged Rose carefully. The old woman smelled like lavender soap and peppermint tea. "Call me when you get there," Rose said. "I will. And when you get home." "I will. And don't skip lunch pretending you're busy." "Grandma, I'm saying it because you need saying too." Annie climbed onto the bus, found a seat halfway back, and watched Rose grow smaller through the window. Her grandmother did not wave until the bus started moving. Then she lifted one hand, chin high, like she was sending Annie to do something honorable instead of entry-level office training. Harrington Logistics sat off Highway 16 inches, a low-glass building beside a warehouse complex. Trucks moved through numbered bays. Men in safety vests checked clipboards. A flag snapped outside the main entrance. Annie stepped off the bus and stood for a moment with her backpack over one shoulder, watching people walk through doors that opened automatically before they reached them. A security guard looked up from the front desk when she entered. He was an older black man with silver in his beard and a name tag that read Mr. Paul. "Morning," he said. "Good morning. I'm Annie Carter. First day." He checked a list, then smiled. "Miss Carter. They're expecting you." "Miss Carter. Not girl. Not hey you. Not the one from the gas station. Miss Carter." The words steadied her enough to sign in. A woman named Karen Willis from Human Resources met her in the lobby. Karen was in her 60s, with short gray hair, comfortable shoes, and a voice that sounded like she had raised children and trained managers with the same patience. "You must be Annie," Karen said. "Yes, ma'am. Karen is fine, unless ma'am makes you feel safer. Some people need a few days." Annie blinked. Karen smiled. "Come on, let's get your badge." The badge had her name, a small photo, and the company logo. Annie touched the plastic edge after Karen clipped it to her blouse. "Looks official," Karen said. "It feels strange. Most official things do until you realize they're just plastic and rules." Karen walked her through the office. Customer service desks. Billing department. Dispatch room with screens, showing routes across Georgia and neighboring states. A break room with a refrigerator where people had written names on lunch bags. A bulletin board with church flyers, a blood drive notice, and a sign-up sheet for softball. Nobody stared the way Annie feared. A few people looked up and nodded. One older woman said, "Morning, honey," then caught herself and added, "I'm Carla. I call everybody honey before 10. You can tell me not to." Annie said, "It's okay." Carla winked. "Give it a week. You might change your mind." Her supervisor was named Malcolm Price, no relation to Marlene or Derek, which he clarified before Annie had to ask. "I heard your last workplace had a Miller problem," he said, then grimaced. That came out wrong. Annie surprised herself by smiling. "A little," he nodded. "Fair. Let me start over. I'm Malcolm. I supervise intake and billing support. Around here, if you make a mistake, we fix the mistake. We don't turn it into a character report." Annie held his eyes for half a second. "Mr. Harrington said something like that." "Good. Then I'm consistent with the boss." He gave her a training binder, a login, and a desk near Carla. Her first task was simple. Match delivery receipts to digital invoice numbers. The system was plain once Malcolm explained it. but Annie's hands still shook the first time she typed her password. Carla noticed. "First day hands," Carla said. "Everybody gets them. I don't want to mess up." "You will." Annie looked at her. Carla shrugged. "Not today, maybe. But eventually. Then somebody will show you where the undo button is. And life will continue." That sounded impossible and ordinary at the same time. At noon, Annie almost stayed at her desk. Then Rose's voice rose in her head. "Don't skip lunch pretending you're busy." She went to the break room and took out the sandwich she had packed, peanut butter on wheat bread, wrapped in foil. She sat alone at first. Then Mr. Paul from security came in with soup in a thermos and sat across from her. "You finding your way?" he asked. "I think so." "Good. First day's mostly learning where the bathrooms are and who steals yogurt." Annie laughed. He stirred his soup. "I saw the news piece." Her smile faded. He did not press. "People will know your story. Some will act like they know you. Those are different things." Annie looked at him. "How do you handle that?" "By remembering I'm more than the worst thing that happened to me and more than the best thing somebody heard about me." She sat with that. After lunch, Karen helped her complete college tuition paperwork. Annie read each line twice. Then she called Grandma Rose from the hallway. "I'm here," Annie said. "You eat?" "Yes." "Don't just, yes, me." "What?" "Peanut butter sandwich." "Whole thing?" "Whole thing." Rose paused. "How is it?" Annie looked through the glass wall at the office, at people working, talking, printing, carrying folders, living in a world that had seemed far away a month ago. "It's a lot," she said. "Too much?" "No," Annie swallowed. "Just bigger." "Good. You needed bigger." That evening, Annie took the bus from Harrington Logistics to the community college campus for orientation. The building smelled like floor polish and old books. Her student ID photo was worse than her work badge, but she held it like a passport. In a classroom with adults of all ages, a counselor explained course requirements, payment deadlines, online portals, tutoring hours. Annie wrote everything down. A woman beside her, maybe 45, whispered, "You nervous too?" "Yes." "Good. I thought it was just me." They both smiled and kept taking notes. When Annie finally reached home, the porch light was on. Grandma Rose sat at the kitchen table with 2 mugs of tea and a plate of sliced apples. "Report," Rose said. Annie set her backpack down. "Mr. Paul says people steal yogurt." Rose nodded seriously. "Office life is dangerous." Annie laughed, then told her everything. The badge, Karen, Malcolm, Carla, the desk, the invoices, the college orientation, the woman who was nervous too. Rose listened like each small detail was a victory worth saving. Later, after Rose went to bed, Annie returned to her room and looked at the framed $5 bill. The day had not made her rich. It had not made the bills disappear. It had not erased Miller's from her memory, or stopped people in town from whispering. But she had gone somewhere new and come home with her name still clean. She sat on the edge of the bed, took out her student ID, then her work badge, and placed them beside the frame. Annie Carter. Employee. Student. Not a miracle. Not a charity case. Not a girl saved by a rich man. A young woman at the beginning of work she intended to earn. By the end of Annie's first year at Harrington Logistics, she had learned that change did not arrive like people imagined. It did not knock once, swing the door open, and carry you into a new life. Most days it came in small habits. A bus caught on time. A lunch packed the night before. A password remembered. A class passed. A mistake corrected without anyone raising their voice. Annie kept a notebook at work now, separate from the spiral one she had used during the Miller's complaint. This one had tabs, invoices, customer calls, tuition, Grandma Rose. Under Grandma Rose, she wrote appointment times, prescription refills, blood pressure numbers, and the names of nurses who spoke kindly. Under tuition, she wrote every payment Harrington's program covered and every hour she worked to earn her place there. She still did not like owing people. Grandma Rose had raised that deep in her bones. But Annie was learning the difference between being owned and being supported. One made you smaller, the other expected you to stand. On a Tuesday in March, Karen Willis stopped by Annie's desk with a folder. "Conference room B," she said. Annie looked up from a stack of delivery corrections. "Did I do something wrong?" Karen smiled. "That question is going to wear itself out one day." "I'm working on it." "Good. Bring your notebook." Conference room B had a long table, a screen on the wall, and coffee that tasted better than it had any right to. William Harrington stood near the window. Jacket off. Sleeves rolled to his forearms. Eleanor sat at the table with a legal pad. Malcolm was there too, along with Mr. Bell and a woman from community outreach named Teresa Grant. Annie stopped at the door. This looks like more than a meeting. William turned. It is. Eleanor patted the chair beside her. Sit, Annie. Nothing bad. That's what people say before paperwork. Mr. Bell lifted a finger. In fairness, there is paperwork. Annie sat down slowly. William picked up a remote and turned on the screen. A simple title appeared, the $5 Fund. Annie stared at it. We've been building this quietly, William said. Fuel assistance for stranded drivers. Small emergency grants for hourly workers. Paid internships for students from Pine Hollow and nearby towns. Basic financial training. Legal referrals for wage complaints. Nothing flashy. Practical help before a bad week becomes a ruined year. Annie looked at Eleanor. You named it that? Eleanor nodded. Only with your permission. My permission? It began with your $5, William said. It should not use that story without your consent. Annie's first instinct was no. Not because the idea was bad, but because the story still felt tender. She remembered the empty pocket, Derek's laugh, Ray's warning, the way hunger had followed her home. She did not want her worst night polished until people could clap for it. Teresa Grant seemed to understand. We don't need your face on a billboard. We don't need you telling the story if you don't want to. The fund can carry the lesson without putting you on display. What lesson? William did not answer for her. Annie looked at the screen again. The words were plain. The $5 Fund. She thought of people stuck at gas stations with dead phones, mothers choosing between medicine and a tank of gas, students missing class because a bus pass cost too much, workers losing wages because nobody told them they could challenge a deduction. She said, if it helps people without making them beg, then yes. Teresa wrote that down. That sentence may become policy. Grandma Rose came to the opening 6 months later wearing her navy church hat and the good pearl earrings she saved for funerals, Easter, and occasions where she wanted the world to understand she had arrived on purpose. Annie had tried to help her out of the car. Rose waved her off, then took Annie's arm anyway after standing. Don't fuss, Rose said. I'm not fussing. You are fussing with your eyebrows. The new office sat in a renovated storefront 2 blocks from the old bus depot, not far from where Annie used to ride home hungry. The sign above the door read, the $5 Fund in dark blue letters. Under it, smaller, emergency help, earned dignity, open doors. Inside, there were no marble floors, no giant portraits, no rich people furniture meant to remind visitors who had power. There was a front desk, 3 private meeting rooms, a coffee station, a children's corner with books, and a wall of local job postings. Near the entrance stood a small glass frame holding a crisp $5 bill, not Annie's original, but the one William had repaid. Beneath it were the words she had written months before. It was all I had, and I still had a choice. Rose stood in front of the frame for a long time. You all right? Annie asked. No. Annie waited. Rose touched the edge of the frame, not the glass. I'm proud in a way that hurts. Annie had no defense for that. She simply leaned her shoulder against her grandmother's. The opening was supposed to be small, but Pine Hollow had a way of gathering around anything that smelled like change. Mrs. Bell came with a casserole wrapped in foil, because she said offices needed feeding too. Mr. Dawson brought a tray of biscuits from his wife. Denise arrived after a nursing shift, still in scrubs, and hugged Annie hard enough to make her ribs complain. Ray came in a clean shirt and stood near the back until Annie waved him forward. You working? She asked. Over at the tire shop now. They treating you right? Better. He looked at the frame. This place is good. It has to be, Annie said. People will come here on bad days. Ray nodded. Bad days need better counters. That was the best thing he had ever said to her. Linda Brennan from the local station came, but she kept her camera outside until Annie agreed to a short interview. Annie had learned boundaries, and Eleanor had helped her practice saying them without apology. Linda asked, what do you want this fund to do? Annie looked past the camera at the line of folding chairs, at Grandma Rose sitting upright in the front row, at William and Eleanor standing off to the side instead of the center. I wanted to help people before they have to prove they're worth helping, Annie said. And I want working people to know that needing help doesn't make them dishonest. William spoke after that, but briefly. He did not retell the whole story. He did not make himself the hero. He said the fund existed because one night a young woman had understood something many adults forget. A small amount of money can carry a large amount of dignity. Then he stepped aside and let Teresa explain the programs. Emergency gas cards, limited and logged, given through partner stations that agreed not to shame recipients. Short-term grocery and medicine support for hourly workers facing a gap between paychecks. Tuition assistance tied to attendance and mentoring. Not perfect grades. A wage rights clinic once a month, staffed by volunteer attorneys and retired payroll workers. Internships for students who had never seen the inside of a professional office but wanted to learn. Grandma Rose listened carefully. When Teresa finished, she leaned toward Annie. That woman knows how to run a room. She scares me a little. Good. Competence should. Later, when the crowd thinned, William found Annie near the children's corner, straightening a stack of picture books. You did well today, he said. I didn't do much. You keep saying that after doing things. She smiled. Bad habit. He looked at the frame near the door. Does it bother you? A little. Say the word, and it comes down. Annie thought about it. No, leave it. Why? Because somebody is going to walk in here embarrassed over needing $10 of gas or $20 of groceries. I want them to see that $5 was enough to start something. Maybe they won't feel so small. William nodded. That is a better reason than any I had. Eleanor joined them with 2 paper cups of lemonade. She handed one to Annie. Your grandmother is telling Mr. Bell his tie is too expensive for this neighborhood. Annie nearly choked. She what? She is correct, William said. They looked over. Mr. Bell was touching his tie with a helpless expression while Rose spoke from her chair, one finger raised. Annie laughed until her eyes stung. That evening, after the chairs were folded and the last casserole dish returned, Annie and Rose stayed a few minutes alone in the office. The street outside was quiet. The sign above the door glowed blue against the window. Rose sat behind the front desk, testing the chair. This is a good chair. You want one like it at home? I want this one. But stealing from a charity office seems poor manners. Annie smiled and leaned against the desk. Rose looked around the room. This place is not a miracle. No, it will not fix every mean thing. I know. It will not make justice fast. No, Ma. Rose nodded. But it gives people a place to stand while they wait. Annie looked at the framed $5 bill, then at the woman who had taught her to give without letting anyone buy her. That's enough? Annie asked. Rose took her hand. Some days, she said, a place to stand is the beginning of everything. 2 years later, Annie stopped at a gas station on the east side of Pine Hollow because Grandma Rose wanted ginger ale. Not any ginger ale, the kind in the green glass bottle from the cooler by the register, because according to Rose, plastic bottles made it taste tired. Annie had learned not to argue with that kind of wisdom. She had finished a long day at Harrington Logistics. Spent 2 hours at the $5 fund, reviewing internship applications, then dropped off a stack of community college forms for a student who wanted to study bookkeeping. She was tired, but not the old kind of tired. This tired had weight, but it also had purpose. She pulled into a station called Parker's Fuel and Food, just as evening settled over the road. The place was newer than Miller's had been. Brighter, too, with clean pumps and a sign advertising chicken tenders, lottery tickets, and bait. Annie parked near the side, took her wallet, and walked inside. The cooler hummed against the back wall. A country song played low from a speaker above the coffee machine. 2 men in work shirts stood near the counter talking about high school football. The cashier, a woman with gray hair and reading glasses, nodded when Annie came in. Evening, honey. Evening, ma'am. Annie found the ginger ale, took 2 bottles because Rose would pretend she only asked for one, and started toward the counter. Halfway there, she heard a voice from outside. Card declined. It was sharp, annoyed, and loud enough to turn heads. Annie glanced through the front window. At pump 2, an older woman stood beside a faded blue sedan with one hand on the pump handle and the other holding a bank card. Her shoulders had folded inward. A boy, maybe 10 or 11, sat in the passenger seat with a backpack in his lap. The woman tried the card again. The pump beeped. The cashier sighed from behind the counter. That pump's been acting right all day, so it ain't us. One of the men near the register looked outside and smirked. Folks always say the card machine's broken when the account is. The other man chuckled. Or they forgot their wallet, or their phone died. Always something. Annie stopped moving. The older woman came inside a moment later. She wore a faded floral blouse, black slacks, and shoes with soles worn thin on one side. Her hair was pinned back with a plastic clip, but loose strands had escaped around her face. She held the card in both hands. "Excuse me," she said to the cashier. "Could I maybe leave my license and come back tomorrow? I just need a few dollars of gas. My grandson has to be home before his mama gets off work." The cashier's face tightened with the discomfort of someone who did not want to be cruel, but had practiced rules too long. "I'm sorry, we can't do that. I understand. I just tried my card. I thought there was enough." The man in the work shirt said, not quietly, "Everybody thinks there's enough until there ain't." The woman heard him. Her face changed. Annie knew that change. Shame did not always arrive with tears. Sometimes it simply pulled a person's eyes to the floor. The boy in the car watched through the window. He was old enough to understand the shape of trouble, but too young to know what to do with it. The woman turned toward the door. "All right. Thank you anyway." Annie set the ginger ale bottles on the nearest shelf and stepped forward. "Ma'am?" The woman paused. "How much do you need?" She shook her head at once. "No, baby. I wasn't asking you. I know. I don't want to bother anybody." "You're not." The man near the counter gave a short laugh. "Here we go." Annie looked at him, not long, just enough. He looked away first. She turned back to the woman. "Pump 2? The woman blinked. "Yes, but I can't." "I asked which pump, not for a speech." The cashier looked from Annie to the woman. "You covering it?" "Yes, ma'am. 20 on pump 2. The older woman took a step closer, startled. "20? No, I only need 5. Annie almost smiled. "5 will get you moving. 20 might get you home without praying at every red light." The woman's mouth trembled. "I can pay you back. I believe you. I mean it. I know." The cashier rang it up. Annie paid with her card. No drama. No envelope. No crowd waiting outside. Just the small beep of approval and the pump number appearing on the screen. The woman stared at Annie as if trying to place her. "Do I know you?" "No, ma'am." "Then why would you do that?" Annie picked up the receipt and handed it to her. "Because once, somebody needed $5 to get home, and everybody else made it harder than it had to be." The woman held the receipt with both hands. "Was it you?" Annie thought of that old night, the empty pocket, the black SUV, Ray's warning, Derek's laugh, Grandma Rose's biscuit in the oven. She thought of William Harrington standing beside pump 3, stripped of his name by an old jacket and a dead phone. She thought of the camera that remembered, the office that opened, the fun that now helped people before shame could take root. "Yes," Annie said, "in a way." Outside, the boy climbed out of the blue sedan. He stood near the passenger door, watching his grandmother with worry he had not yet learned to hide. Annie followed the woman out and waited while the gas flowed. The boy looked at her shirt. It had the $5 fund logo stitched near the pocket. "What's that?" he asked. "A place where people come when the week gets too heavy." He thought about that. "Do you help kids?" "Sometimes. Mostly we help families. My grandma doesn't like help." The older woman gave him a look. "Marcus." Annie smiled. "Most grandmas don't. Mine treats help like it's a stray dog that might bite." That made the woman laugh, and the laugh loosened something in her face. Marcus looked at Annie again. "Do you work there?" "Yes." "Do you have to be rich to help people?" The question hit her harder than it should have. Annie leaned one shoulder against the pump and looked back through the window at the men inside, the cashier, the cooler with Rose's ginger ale still waiting. Then she looked at the boy. "No," she said. "You have to notice." He frowned. "That's it?" "That's where it starts." The pump clicked off. $20. The woman replaced the nozzle carefully. "What's your name, baby?" she asked. "Annie Carter." The woman's eyes widened slightly. Pine Hollow still remembered, but not always accurately. Annie could see the story moving behind the woman's eyes, looking for the version she had heard. "You're that young lady," the woman said softly. "From the gas station." Annie nodded once. "I was." The woman reached for her hand, then stopped, asking permission without words. Annie gave it. The woman squeezed her fingers. "I heard about that. Folks talked like the rich man was the miracle. He wasn't." "No," the woman said. "I guess not." Marcus climbed back into the car, then rolled down the window. "Miss Annie?" "Yes?" "If I notice somebody, what do I do?" Annie thought of giving him a clean answer. "Tell an adult. Be kind. Don't be afraid." But children deserve truth, with the edges still on. "You do what is safe," she said. You don't have to be foolish to be good, but if you can help, help. If you can speak, speak. If you can't do either, don't laugh with the people making it worse. Marcus nodded slowly, like he was putting the words somewhere safe. The woman got behind the wheel, then looked out at Annie. I'll pay this forward. That's better than paying me back. The blue sedan pulled away, taillights glowing red as it turned onto the road toward town. Annie watched until it disappeared. When she went back inside, the cashier had set the 2 ginger ales on the counter. Your grandmother likes the glass bottles? The woman asked. She says plastic makes it taste tired. The cashier smiled. She's not wrong. The man who had laughed earlier cleared his throat. That was a good thing you did. Annie looked at him. It would have been better if nobody had made her feel small first. He looked down at his coffee. Yeah, he said. You're right. Annie paid for the ginger ale and left. At home, Grandma Rose sat at the kitchen table with her pill organizer open and a crossword puzzle half finished. She looked up when Annie came in. You took long enough to buy 2 bottles. I stopped to help someone. Rose leaned back. Gas? Annie smiled. Gas. How much? 20. Rose whistled softly. Inflation got your kindness too. Annie laughed and set 1 bottle in front of her. Glass, as ordered. Rose twisted off the cap with effort. Annie reached to help. Rose pulled it away. I got it. Yes, ma'am. The cap came loose. Rose took a sip, closed her eyes, and nodded. That's medicine the doctors don't know about. Annie sat across from her. For a while, they listened to the evening settle around the house. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. Somewhere down the street, a child called for someone to wait up. Rose looked at her. You thinking about that night? Some. Hurts less? Different. That's how healing works. Same room. Different furniture. Annie looked toward the shelf in the corner where the framed $5 bill now sat beside her work badge from Harrington Logistics and her community college certificate. The frame had moved from her bedroom to the living room after the fund opened. Rose said if a lesson was going to live in the house, it might as well greet company. I used to think the $5 changed everything, Annie said. Rose sipped her ginger ale. It did, and it didn't. Annie nodded. It didn't make me kind. It just showed me whether I still was. Rose pointed the bottle at her. Now you're starting to sound old. Is that bad? No, just expensive. Wisdom usually is. Later that night, after Rose went to bed, Annie stepped onto the porch. The air was warm, and the street was quiet, except for crickets and the far hum of traffic. She thought of Miller's Gas and Mart, now under new management after the investigation. She thought of Derek, who had pleaded down to a misdemeanor and left town for work nobody bragged about. She thought of Marlene, who sold the station after the wage settlement and never once apologized. She thought of Ray at the tire shop, Denise finishing nursing classes, Keisha working the front desk at the $5 fund 2 days a week, and William and Eleanor, who still came to Pine Hollow without cameras. Justice had not fixed everything. It had not gone backward and fed the hungry girl behind the counter that night. It had not erased the words people had said before they knew who mattered. But it had built something. A place to stand, a door, a fund, a way for shame to meet help before it hardened. Annie leaned against the porch rail and watched a car move along the distant road. Somewhere, somebody was getting home. Maybe because they had enough gas. Maybe because someone had noticed. Maybe because a boy named Marcus would remember not to laugh when another person's bad day came into view. Inside, the framed $5 bill caught a little light from the lamp. Annie did not need to touch it. She knew what it meant now. Kindness was not small because money was small. Kindness was large when it cost something and still did not ask to be seen. And sometimes, the thing you gave away when you had almost nothing came back as more than repayment. It came back as the person you chose to become. The lesson of Annie's story is that kindness is never small when it costs you something. $5 may seem like nothing to someone with plenty, but to Annie, it was her dinner, her safety, and the last bit of control she had that night. She gave it anyway, not because she expected a reward, but because she saw another human being stranded and chose not to look away. The story reminds us that real character is revealed in quiet moments, before anyone important is watching. Justice may not come quickly, and people may judge us unfairly, but one honest act can expose the truth, restore dignity, and become the beginning of something far greater than we imagined. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.